I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Board of Leavenworth County Commission. We'd like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to begin with a moment of silence. I'd like to ask you to remember all the people working in the tornado cleanup and the victims of the tornado, and please keep our first responders safe. Roll call will start with Commissioner Culberson is present, Commissioner Cos is present, Commissioner Smith is present, Commissioner Shimke, good to have you back, is present.
Thanks, sir.
Commissioner Stevens is present. I'd like to open up the public comment portion of our meeting. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please come forward, state your name.
Morning, Commissioners. Joe Herring Surveying, 315 North 5th Street. Looks like you got a full agenda and full house today, so quickly, Don Wilming, the owner of Rock Ridge subdivision that was discussed during the work session, has asked me to ask once again to allow his preliminary plat to be heard by this board in hopes to get direction to be sent back to planning and zoning as a final plat where he can address any of the further issues that may come before the staff. So if he can get put on the agenda, he would appreciate that on a time to bring that plat back to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners have any questions of Mr. Herring?
No.
I mean, is this something we can do by following the statutes?
Commissioners, I have had the opportunity to review this matter. Procedurally, a plat was submitted to the Planning and Zoning staff, reviewed, and subsequently presented to the Planning Commission, which denied the preliminary or the proposal for the preliminary plat by an 8-0 vote, listing their concerns. The applicant, as they have the right to do, brought that matter to you, more or less appealing the decision of the Planning Commission, requesting that the preliminary plat be approved. The then sitting Board of County Commissioners rather peremptorily denied the application, I believe by a 2-1 vote, and that was the end of the matter. Technically, the applicant was to have filed an appeal in State District Court within 30 days from the date of that decision. KSA 19-223 handles the appeal of your decisions. So in essence, there were staff issues, then to the Planning Commission, then to the Board of County Commissioners, and the next step appeal would have been to State District Court. Obviously, well in excess of 30 days has passed since this matter went forward, and quite frankly, it's probably to everyone's benefit it didn't go across the street. The applicant can resubmit the preliminary plat. I would suggest that it go through the channel of going back to the Planning Commission. I think everybody has been able to identify the issues that were noted as deficiencies or at least need to be addressed. That, I would think, could be done relatively quickly. Allow the Planning Commission and your planning staff to look at it and then bring it, if necessary, at some point back to you, either for approval as a final plat or if it has to go through the appeal process again. But I think to protect the interests of future property owners within that subdivision, should it occur, and the integrity of the process, that would be my recommendation. Yes, it does not lead to an automatic, you won't be hearing it next week, but I think if it goes through the process, it's more likely to end with a constructive and positive result. Again, I think all the issues have been identified. This would give some time for both the developer and your staff and the Planning Commission to try to reach some accommodation.
Will this delay, if we go through that process, cause him not to be able to
Yes, and the main question was he was not allowed to speak at the Board of County Commissioners meeting and represent his project, and that was the discussion that we've had previously. That, you know, he was really denied the right to talk and represent his point of view at that time, and that's why he wants to be heard at a preliminary level. If it is the board's desire to send him back through the process, as Mr. Van Paris has said, we would ask for some special consideration in fees and possibly the ability to take preliminary and final at the same time. And I know that is not standard procedure, but in this case, it may warrant some consideration.
Mr. Van Paris, does it change anything that he wasn't given the ability to address the board as far as the political process goes anyway?
Well, I was present at that meeting, Commissioner, and when I said peremptorily, I meant that. In fact, it was announced before the applicant had any opportunity to speak by two commissioners, sitting commissioners at the time, neither who were present, that they'd already decided to deny the preliminary plat and did not have a hearing. However, technically, the applicant had the opportunity to appeal that through district court. The reason I'm suggesting that it go at least through the process of having the Planning Commission rehear a preliminary plat on this is to try to avoid having a repeat of what a procedurally correct repeat of what occurred last November, in that if there were issues then, those same issues would exist today, and going through the Planning Commission process would allow some time to try to get those matters resolved rather than it ending up in front of you.
Per Joe's request, is there any precedence for hearing both at the same time to help try to accelerate the timeline?
Commissioners, I think you could suggest to your staff that they take all actions to try to expedite the processing of this, and you certainly have the prerogative to consider the initial filing fee to still cover this matter, so you don't need to basically double charge him. But again, I think in the long-term interests of all involved, going through that process has benefit.
Here's my thoughts. I know we want to try to hurry this up, but when we talked about this in a work session, if we start over again from scratch, we haven't changed any of the rules that planning, zoning, and the board have been operating on. And the plat, if it's represented exactly the same, you're going to get the same result. I think it was a consensus of the board when we talked about this that we don't want to go against staff recommendations, but if we all felt that something wasn't done the way we think it should have been done, we need to change the rules that the staff is using. And if we just run this right back through real fast, we're not adjusting any of the rules that we gave staff to use. It's the same, you're going to get the same result. So I understand you want to hurry up, but I think we're right on the cusp of adjusting our comp plan and the way we're interpreting the rules that we already have. So I think we need to give it time to adjust what we're telling staff we want to see planning zoning department and the planning board to allow and not allow. So it's kind of a tricky situation. I don't think they should pay fees over again because that's really not fair, given that we think they just weren't given the chance to talk. But I think if we run it through real fast, you're going to get the same result. And if the end result is we overrode staff, that's really not what we're after. We want to make it to where this type of subdivision is more accepted by the way we set the new comp plan up and give our staff the tools they need to accept it in the first place. So I think running this through before we adjust any personnel on the planning board, any rules we're giving our staff, is a moot point. So
You can always grant a variance on anything.
you can, but I'm just saying, I think this board feels we're going to take a new direction with these type of subdivisions, and we haven't done that yet officially. So I think if this was to come in a couple months, we would have the time to change what we're asking staff to accept and not accept. So
The board even have a say in it if Basic Growth District absorbs its property?
that's something we're going to have to look at. If it's in the growth district for the cities, then we've got to be careful that we don't take away our power to allow something that we want to see. So
Well,
there's a couple things going on.
but Baser's already looked at this particular plat and had no problem with it, correct?
According to Mark Lee's comments that I
Yes.
read, I don't believe there was any comments, but I can't comment on anything further.
Okay,
I'm not knowledgeable of that.
okay.
If we pursue that path that we're talking about, is that acceptable to?
I don't know if you delay, we're looking at a year and something for the comp plan, if it gets approved, to get through and in adjustment of rules, if those get approved. He's really wanting to take this forward now. We're already out of a building season, already on a plan that looked pretty well accepted by this board, that the board liked it during the work session. If we wait a year and something, times change, economies change, you may just get a farm ground, so.
And that's
That's the
the
risk.
tricky part, is like, it's gonna be a long time before
Right.
we might have the rules set up. So we could, like Doug
Do
said, do a
variances.
variance, as long as we're
Right.
on the same path, and we know that's the direction we're gonna take, then it could
Yeah,
work.
the Exception to that's why we come to the Board of County Commission to get those exceptions on plats.
Okay.
So that's what he would be asking for, those exceptions. Appreciate your consideration. I know there might be more discussion about this, but we would like to bring it back in that manner. And if it's, like I said, if it's the way Mr. Van Paris suggested, then those considerations of waiving fees, bring them both at the same time. It will take some time to get it back in, because that will require final road development, drainage calcs, and some significant fees on his part outside of what he's already paid to get that in front of the planning commission and the planning staff. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Anyone else wishing to speak in public comment? Come forward, state your name.
Good morning.
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 I'm Nancy Carpenter. My husband and I have lived in the southeastern corner of Sherman Township for the past 34 years. The first thing I'd like to do is thank the county for its support in the aftermath of the tornado that struck Linwood. The county emergency management team, the sheriff, police, and fire departments, the public works personnel, the transfer station folks, the health department, the utility workers, Commissioner Stephen, the hundreds of volunteers offering both time and donations. The list goes on, so thank you. Next, I'd like to ask for your continued assistance on a matter that has been on the minds of many residents in southeastern Leavenworth County. Unless the agenda changes, next week the Planning Commission will consider a special use permit application for a sand pit in Sherman Township. Before the tornado, many citizens were taking part in efforts to better understand the proposal and formulate a strategy on how best to present their concerns to the Planning Commission. The tornado stopped them in their tracks. Their focus has rightfully shifted from the sand pit to rebuilding their lives. In light of this disaster, I ask that you use your influence to postpone the Planning Commission's public hearing on this application until at least their July meeting. This would give Sherman Township residents time to concentrate solely on recovery. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
What's the policy on the planning commission on this? Or Mr.
Commissioner Stephen, members of the commission, if I might, the Planning Commission, under state law, is not an extension of the Board of County Commissioners. It is a separate commission and has certain functions that are given to it by state law. If it were simply an extension of the commission, you wouldn't have a planning commission, you just have planning staff. So state law contemplates that you make appointments to a planning commission that then independently makes certain decisions, which eventually do come to you for either approval, denial, or some modification. The planning commission controls its own agenda. My suggestion, and I apologize I've not had time to respond to Ms. Carpenter's emails, which she very succinctly states out her position, and very clearly so. That request would be more properly made to the Planning Commission. Now, the Planning Commission has already sent out the notices for the July 12th hearing,
You mean the June 12th?
or excuse me, the June 12th hearing. So consequently, there may be people who have made arrangements to appear on June 12th that would now face some inconvenience for not being present. That being said, it is not required that the Planning Commission initiate and finish the process of hearing the special use permit application on one night. In other words, the Planning Commission has, at their discretion, the ability to open the public hearing, table the public hearing to continue it at a later time and date. But I think I really question whether it would be, you would be able to, or whether it would be appropriate for this board to basically cancel a matter that the Planning Commission has on its agenda. I think, again, that's a prerogative of the Planning Commission.
Well, I think Mr. Rosenthal, who's the chairman of the Planning Commission, had referred several citizens to the administration of the planning and zoning, and he said that really wasn't within his parameter to delay the meeting. Are you saying that he has that authority, or are you saying that?
Well, it's hard for me to argue with the chairman of the Planning Commission over what his authority is, but the Planning Commission controls its agenda, so the Planning Commission would be the body to continue the hearing on the 12th, again, because the public notices went out not under your name, but under the Planning Commission and county staff. So I would suggest that written requests can be forwarded, email requests can be forwarded, and staff will forward those on to the members of the Planning Commission. And at that time, I think there's no reason to believe that they would not make an appropriate decision, either to, at their discretion, continue the hearing entirely, or to begin it and table it to a later date to allow more time.
Is it within the authority of the chairman of the Planning Commission to delay this for 1 month?
The practice that I have observed is that the Planning Commission, at the very beginning of their meeting, votes as a body to approve the agenda that is to be presented that night. So I think, and again, since notice has been sent out,
Public hearing would have to be open.
The public hearing needs to be open, but it can be continued to allow for additional time. And I think that is the request. You could express your support for that request to the Planning Commission, but it needs to be made by the Planning Commission.
So the chairman of the Planning Commission, in your opinion, does not have the authority to delay that hearing?
I would state that my observation of their past practice has been that the Planning Commission as a body votes to approve their agenda. It's one of the first items they take up at their meetings.
Does he have the authority to delay that?
To delay
He can't delay the public hearing.
the public.
You have the authority to delay.
No, the chairman could not delay the public hearing.
The chairman could not. I was wondering if he had the authority.
Because the notices that went out, the public hearing has to be opened. What Mr. Van Per's saying is the Planning Commission is a body, just like this body votes.
Correct, I
Could
understand
vote
that.
to continue it, but the public hearing must be opened because the public hearing has been noticed.
Since notice has been sent out, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission does not have the authority to delay.
Was it not just a couple of weeks ago that we had the same dialogue over an item being moved and how many people were upset that it was moved? Point being, because we couldn't get the notices out in front of that topic being, it sounds like to me that between everyone that's contacted Planning and Zoning and our ability to support either allowing this to continue through 2 meetings or potentially move to the next, they'd be able to make that decision in the next meeting.
But you're talking notices went out to everybody within 1,000 feet. Is that correct? Is that the
Yes.
notices we're talking about?
That's what's required by.
And nobody within 1,000 feet suffered any damage during this storm?
I mean, I don't believe they would have, but I
think
have
so.
not been down there to verify that personally. It's just, according to the maps that I've seen, no, that wouldn't be the case. There wouldn't be any damage.
I'm pretty sure they didn't. It's pretty far south.
Okay.
I would suggest we just leave it on the agenda and then make a motion to table it at that meeting
If they-
and move it
if
to
they
the
so
next.
Planning
choose.
Commission, so it's-
Yeah.
The only difficulty, and I will point this out, that when people down there are doing all the work they are doing to repair their lives and their homes and all the things that's going on, now they're going to have to refocus and get, obviously, they're very concerned about this, and now they're going to have to refocus onto this issue, whereas if we could just make an announcement that we're going to do.
Yeah,
We can't make
I
that
don't think
announcement
anybody
then.
disagrees.
Right.
We just don't have the
We don't have the
control to do it.
authority.
I'm just pointed it out that it's gonna be a working an inconvenience on people down there.
But that's something that needs to be taken up by the Planning Commission, not by the Board of County Commissioners. And I think that in your question with the chair, I don't believe that Commissioner Smith has the authority to cancel one of our meetings without the consensus of
The rest of the board.
the rest of the board. Once we, that's why we, as a board, change meeting dates and times and
Well,
vote on them.
and I
So-
understand how it's normally been handled, but I just wondered if if the chairman of the planning and zoning had, that was my question, if he had the authority. So that was just my question.
Wouldn't, Jeanette LeBee's here. Jeanette?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just come forward so we can get, everybody can hear you. Thank you. Well, people want to be able to watch.
Yes,
you.
I understand. Thank you. Jeanette Labby-Holdman. I am a member of the Planning Commission, and I had made the request also to Jeff Joseph, if this is something that we could delay a little bit. I physically have been out there to the scene, working with the Lions Club on their special, they have a special vehicle that they bring in with supplies, and we were working out there this weekend, and I really feel, do we have the authority to do something online? Are the Planning Commission members allowed to vote on a subject online? So that if our chairperson put out, where do you feel we should be with this? Please tell me yes or no whether we can table it or not. Is that an option for us?
No.
It
The
isn't?
Kansas Open Meetings Act prohibits meetings such as that. A meeting has to be open to the public, and an online vote realistically cannot meet that criteria.
Okay, so that means everybody's going to come in and then we're going to table it. Well, I'm thinking that we should, and just go and have a cup of coffee somewhere on the way home.
Well, when you said you were out, was anybody's property damaged within 1,000 feet? Any of these notices sent out where their property's damaged?
I can't tell you that. I was there handing out supplies. But I had been on both sides of where the tornado had made its path. And so I can't tell you whether these people, but I mean, it's generally impacting everyone, even if you weren't hit. Half your trees are down in your
Right,
yard.
sure.
I mean, it's a pretty stressful situation for everyone to have that happening. No electricity, no natural gas. I mean, they're impacted even if they're within 1,000 feet.
Well, and I know that people had wanted to be able to bring all of the information, and they were going to have a meeting to bring all of the information together to bring to this meeting. And now that had to be canceled due to the tornado, and because of the timeline that this creates, it makes it very difficult for people. And if there was any possible way that we as a Board of Commissioners could instruct a delay, I think that would be best. If that's not possible, that's the effort we're trying to
Well,
make.
it sounds like there's support both at the county commission as well as planning and zoning to table it. This is down to protocol and process and what we can and cannot do in the interim, given the requirements put on us. So.
Commissioner Shimke, members of the commission, and I hate to be the wet blanket continually this morning, but there's a reason the procedure needs to be followed, and I don't think following the procedure prejudices either proponents or opponents to the proposed special use. However, if you don't follow procedure, then either side is in a position to potentially challenge the final result, and you start all over again. So my suggestion would be to allow the Planning Commission as a body to exercise its discretion and prerogative, but to determine whether they will open the public hearing, close the public hearing that night, or allow additional time and testimony by continuing to a later date. But I think that's really at the discretion of the Planning Commission. Notice has gone out, so even though it will be a great inconvenience, I think that's about the safest and most practical course to be taken at this time.
Commissioner Stevens, when you held your meeting at the fire station, what was the thought? Was it going to be on the 12th or was it going to be in July sometime?
We didn't have a meeting at the fire station. It was canceled due to the tornado.
I thought you held one.
Oh, previously?
Yeah.
That was a couple months ago, and
Yeah.
that was just information.
Oh,
That was
okay.
just, all that meeting was informational. There was supposed to be a meeting 2 days after, and we were actually gonna try to include, you know, every interested party, and because of the tornado, that had to be canceled. And a lot of the information that they were gonna present was gonna be tried to be collated and organized so that everybody would have a very organized presentation at the meeting. So now that that's had to be canceled, all I'm saying is that it's working a hardship on people.
Commissioners, while I again would question your authority to control the agenda of the Planning Commission, I think it's properly theirs. You can certainly express support for the proposition that additional time and opportunity be given to the people with respect to this particular issue. Again, there's no requirement that the matter be brought forward and finalized in one meeting. The law specifically contemplates that a public hearing can be opened with notice given and continued to a later date and time as long as it's publicly announced in the meeting. That's entirely allowable and proper, and it would not be improper for this board to express support for that proposition, to allow additional time.
So are you saying like we would pass a resolution?
No.
Or
Just
as a.
More like a
say-
memo.
I'm assuming we could work
Or
with
like a
Mr.
memo.
Lawfrey and Mr. Joseph to create some, what the board would support as far as recommendations relative to next week's.
Commissioners, I think you have a very good planning commission. You will have a good planning commission. I think it's only reasonable to expect that they will make a good and proper decision. You can certainly express your support for the proposition of allowing additional time and perhaps an additional hearing.
I think one thing that would be important to note, because of what's on our agenda today, that if the public hearing is opened and tabled to July, it will likely be a different composition of the Planning and Zoning Board that will be hearing the second half of that public hearing. Just something to consider.
We got to get public comment closed.
Just a couple things.
She already had her chance at the podium.
Okay.
Do you have something that you hadn't brought up before?
I actually had a question of the council, if I'm allowed to ask.
Okay, and then we got to get moving on.
There was a public notice in the paper put a notice out that the planning commission was to hear this in April. The people didn't know. It was put out that it was to be heard in May. The people didn't know. How were those hearings canceled? Was it the applicant? Is that who I need to speak with?
That's a planning commission question, because we don't have anything to do with it until it gets through planning.
Okay, so you can put a notice in the paper, but you don't have to go to the planning commission. Okay, awesome.
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
I never seen any.
I don't know.
We'll have to follow up with that, because I don't remember seeing that. Those-
I'll follow.
I think it is a question for planning and zoning, but I do think the applicant has the ability to delay at their
As long as
request.
as long as the
The table.
notice is, the notice of public hearing hasn't went out.
But
We
she
have
said
to
it
have
was
it
in
on a
the
regular
paper.
basis, so I'll follow up, I'll look and see.
We'll
what
follow up and get you an answer on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak at this time? And we'll close public comment and move on to administrative business. Mr. Lawfrey?
I think we have plenty on the agenda today. I'll refrain from any public administrative business.
Okay. Consent agenda, has commissioners had a chance to look at the consent agenda items? Is there any questions?
I actually had two notes just for my clarification, and maybe part of this was my being unable to attend last week. So I saw a couple vehicles listed that, again, anytime I see large line items, I just have to inquire as far as, it looked like it was a couple of Ford Fusions, but even more so it said from Rustiek, which even caught my eye by surprise. Yeah, so it hasn't been rusty for quite a while unless we got it from Wichita, so.
Wichita.
So there are a couple vehicles that I had a question about.
It's not Rusty Eck and Zach.
No, it says Rusty Eck in the check register.
Oh, did they buy them in Wichita?
That's what I.
It could be.
If they purchased off of the state contract, it's very well that they would come from
Could
Wichita.
have been, okay. It wasn't so much about where, I thought it was interesting, because as far as I know, Rusty hasn't been around here for a while.
Yeah.
And then, well, I was gonna say, it's, Jeff would probably know, I don't know when it transitioned, but it's been.
At least.
At least.
But I was also curious, just the use of the fusions, I don't know that it was,
What department you mean?
yeah.
I think that was for the appraiser's office,
For the appraiser's office,
Yeah.
okay.
and they were purchased off state contract.
So it would be Wichita.
That all makes sense, I thought, we gotta update our contact information if we're still calling Zach Ford. Rusty, yeah, anyway, and then the other one was, I saw there was an Eisenhower easement amount that was pretty substantial, and I kind of had two questions. One is, it always surprises me to see easement work continuing after a project has either already begun or is in process. I mean, it would seem you'd love to have all easements acquired prior to project starting. So one is, it may be just my education as to why we'd still be in easement dialogue, and then also why the amount was so substantial.
Commissioner, I believe the amount is roughly 60,000.
Just shy, yeah.
Okay. We've been in protracted negotiations with the property owner. The property owner has agreed to the terms of that. It's a matter of getting signatures, but I do have assurances from his legal counsel. It's a matter of timing to get the easement signed. I agree with you. I would have preferred this been completed quite some time ago, but it will be completed. That's why the check was issued at this time, to complete the transaction.
Ultimately, the project, we have to be at a certain point before we can even begin property acquisition. We have to identify what property we actually need.
Right.
And that's why sometimes you'll see it later on. The second thing is, we try to do this without using our power of eminent domain. We really try to avoid that. So when we're in a good faith negotiation process, which we were with this particular property owner, and we were making headway, we didn't feel the need to come to the board and ask for eminent domain. That's why this one just took a little longer. But we always have that tool, so we knew we can get the property if we need to through eminent domain. We just preferred to handle it this way through private negotiation.
Commissioner Shimke, it dealt with a matter of several trees that took some time to discuss,
Okay.
I think it was a fence, too.
and a fence, but those matters have been resolved, and that's consequently why the payment process has been initiated.
Okay.
Now, if there was equipment out there moving dirt, you should be concerned. We haven't really.
Well, no, but we've been
Project-
doing utility relocations, and the project is committed, and then again,
Oh, yeah, it's
we're,
committed.
right, I mean, we're
You're
talking about
absolutely
it all the time. so
Yeah,
it's
if
not-
negotiations would have stalled where we didn't think they were going to go forward, we would have came back and asked for the eminent domain process. But this person has been working with us in good faith for quite a while.
Well, and maybe this is more of a question for when we're spending time with Public Works. I think it'd just be helpful to see, especially on larger projects, get an understanding of, again, number of acquisitions versus eminent domain, and see kind of how certain acquisitions fare. I mean, is it, how do we set a threshold of where it becomes maybe inequitable for the county? Because that's got to be a question as well, so.
You're absolutely right. There was quite a few projects we did that it cost more for right-of-way than to do the job. That's why the paving in place is what we can afford.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions on the consent agenda?
Those are the only two I had.
Okay. All right. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion,
Go ahead. Move that we approve the consent agenda.
second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, voting?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. All right, we ready for information systems? Mr. Marlboro here?
I don't see him, but I can.
All right, then we'll
I can-
move to the
I can-
sheriff.
I can
Oh, you can
handle
do it?
this, yeah. This is,
All right.
this is really, I think the board understands that currently our domain name is leavenworthcounty.org, In the past, it used to be impossible to get the .gov designation. They have recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, it has been opened up where counties can go and get the .gov designation, but it requires authorization by the Board of County Commissioners and a signed application by the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. So we're just asking that you approve for Mr. Marlboro to proceed with obtaining the Leavenworth County .gov designation.
Okay. We'll have to change all of our cards.
We'll have to change it, but, and at the same time, and that we will be updating the website if we obtain a new domain name, correct?
Well, updating the website is going to be part of the budget presentation, but yes,
Okay.
we're working on that. The .org will continue to work. We'll still have that. It's just we wanted to get the .gov as well. There are certain things that if you have that .gov email address, that it automatically recognizes you as a government employee so that you can go sign up for different things without having to submit all the credentials. So it'll be beneficial to the county. And a lot of people now expect it, so they look, first thing they do is look for leavenworthcounty.gov, so.
Might get some more junk mail.
And Mr. Loffer, I think this is already, I may have submitted this at one time, but if we could also look into the .com as well, that might be useful.
We have, I have instructed staff to look into that. They
Okay.
did. It is held by a private group who has, they've paid the extra to be private, so we don't even know who they are. There's
Uh-huh.
no way to contact them to offer to buy it, which tells me they don't intend to get rid of it anytime soon.
Okay.
So there are places that go out and just buy those. When they see somebody has registered the other domains, they buy them and hold on to them to see if maybe they can get an offer. But they typically have it very easy to contact them to make that offer. These people
Right.
actually have it hidden to where you can't even tell who actually owns it. So we did look into that.
I'm excited because this will be like a reset button for junk mail.
Well, the .org will still be
Yeah, we'll get
working.
twice.
Yeah, your email just forwarded, right?
We'll double the junk mail.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Lawfrey about this? Now, consider a motion to approve a letter requesting authority over leavenworthcounty.gov.
So moved.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting, start with Jeff.
Aye.
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 Motion carried. Now we're ready for the sheriff.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Andy.
This morning I have an agreement. As part of our public safety communication systems, we utilize a radio tower on Fort Leavenworth, which is owned by the Army Corps of Engineers. Typically, it's a 5-year agreement that we enter into to use that space. Time's come to renew that agreement, and so I'm asking for the commission chairman to sign a 5-year licensure agreement ending in 2024.
Commissioners have any questions of the sheriff?
5 years is the most you can get, Andy?
I'm sorry?
5 years is the most you can get?
I believe so.
At a time?
Yes,
Okay. Because it just seems like you can make
Every
this
5 years.
99.
5 years.
Okay.
May not need it in 5 years, may all be satellites.
That's true. Technology.
Drones will be carrying out the satellite. Any other questions on this? Pretty standard procedure here.
Ready for the motion?
Then I'll consider a motion to authorize the chairman to sign the license agreement.
Motion to authorize the chairman to sign the license agreement for antenna space for the Project P25 compliant public safety communication systems located at Fort Leavenworth Military Installation.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting, I'll start with Mike.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you,
Sheriff.
Sheriff. All right, we're ready. Oh, I'll do that while I'm right here.
And while you're here, thank you for everything you've been doing.
Looks like you guys have been swamped.
Have a good one.
At least everybody's been safe, though. All right, we're ready for Basic Pride. Mr. Matthews?
Morning, Commissioners.
Hey, John.
Morning.
For the record, John Matthews, 17629 166th Street. I do come before you today representing the Pride organization of the city of Basehor. They have worked diligently to
come up with different kinds of programs and viewed by the city and so forth. I can actually tell you that we started having a fireworks show back when we celebrated 100 years. And I was part of that got that specific event started. Unfortunately, as time marches on, prices go up, but not necessarily donations. And they're finding themselves short. And that's why they're requesting $500. Right now, the total price of the fireworks has quite yet been determined, but it does run in the thousands of dollars because they put on a really good show. And we are requesting a donation from this organization for $500, please. Any questions?
How much have they raised, like, what's the total budget for fireworks, do you know?
A little over $3,000.
Okay.
John, is this something we've donated to in the past, or is this a completely new? Is this a new request, or is this something we've donated to in the past? I'm not
This is
sure.
our new request. We never
Okay.
have asked for money before from
Okay.
you.
They do put on a big fireworks display. They have 4th of July parade. They do.
Yes.
Good organization.
Show brings in hundreds of viewers. It's about 45 minutes long, depending on peripheral conditions we can't control, like wind, rain.
Mm-hmm. Commissioners have any more questions of Mr. Matthews on the request? Mr. Lawfrey, what could this fund come out of, or what fund could it come out of?
Well, the Board of County Commissioners has funds designated in their budget for mid-year requests like this. And you have sufficient funds to support this request. I think that if approved, I would expect that there may be other fireworks displays that would come in and ask for similar donations. Just
Do we have any others in Leavenworth County? Easton has one.
I think
don't they?
Lansing has one,
Everybody
Easton
does.
has one.
Lansing has.
And that's what I worry about, is
Okay.
we haven't done this for anybody else, and I think we're opening Pandora's box here if we start doing this. I mean, I know it's a great service, actually, but I'm afraid we're gonna start something.
I think with,
Back to fireworks to go off.
Maybe.
well, I'm not sure, I mean, that would just be municipalities that would be trying to even put together a display like that. I mean, and it is something that the public really enjoys.
It is.
I mean, you know, I'm
But-
just saying,
John,
Yeah, if I don't-
how much does the city of Basehor contribute towards this?
I don't have the budgeted amount in front of me. I would have to guesstimate 1,500.
So Jeff, I don't necessarily disagree with you. At the same time, maybe if we do set this precedence, that's going to be the cap.
Yeah, we do for each
So we
city.
know what we're opening ourselves up to,
that was
potentially.
what I was getting at.
Yeah, not to
Yeah.
So
exceed.
maybe what you could authorize today so they wouldn't have to,
Come
as
in.
the 4th of July is coming up.
Come ask us.
You might as
Is that
well
if
just
any
go ahead and send them
municipality-
out.
Yeah.
If any municipality or any fireworks display set up for a municipality like this one comes in and asks, that we, as staff, would be authorized to award them up to $500. That way, they don't miss out because they couldn't get in here in time.
I agree. That's a good.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a motion, huh?
Is that your motion, Mr. Colson?
I'm not making a motion.
He doesn't agree with doing it, so.
I'll make that a motion.
That's what he said.
So I have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Stevens to authorize $500 to each municipality that has a fireworks display.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, John. Okay. All right. Now we're ready for a funding request from the Richard Allen Culture Museum, or Center and Museum.
I think before you kick that off, if you just give me just a few minutes to give the board the background on this.
Okay.
Each year, of the past few years, the county commission has budgeted $50,000 to contribute towards historical societies or historical centers in the county. Typically, we have requests that far exceed the $50,000, and those, the board, as you make your decisions today, or you may delay your decision until you hear all the presentations. The $50,000 is typically what you work within. Just a heads up on that, so as you start approving or not approving, you realize that there are requests that exceed what you have budgeted, and these requests are for this year's budget.
And that was going to be my next question is, how much is in that fund? Is there leftover?
$50,000 is what's budgeted, that had, nothing has
It
been
was
spent
cleaned
out.
out last year. Okay.
Oh, it actually, they went over last year by a couple of $1,000s, I believe.
4,000 or something.
Yeah, so, again, just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah.
If you
And-
funded all of these, you would far exceed what you have
Yeah.
budgetarily set aside.
And a little more history,
No, they didn't.
a lot of the organizations didn't know about this fund until year before last, I think. So the list has gotten a lot bigger just in the last 2 to 3 years, so.
Well, some of the requests, in fact, I think your
Nobody,
Yeah.
first 2 requests this year, I don't believe they've ever asked for funds in the past.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
Well,
Each one of the museums or historical societies was given an opportunity to turn in their requests, and you do have those in your packet along with the spreadsheet, just kind of defining where their needs are and the amount that is requested, just so you could see it on one sheet.
and I know that last year, and as we're looking at this or considering, I think that, as I recall, I may be wrong, that it was kind of like, we had our total, we had a number of applications that all were very worthy applicants that, for consideration, and then it was just kind of divided evenly, the total amount that would be, so for each organization, if we have $50,000 and we have 7 applications, that we could say, each one we will give up to, or start off with
$7,000.
$7,000, and if they've asked for less, then we don't give them more than what they asked for. Then we kind of divide again with what's remaining in the pool of funds we have between all the people who have requested funding, and kind of
you're right.
do it that way. And then, so some people may be not getting anywhere near what they wanted. Others will get exactly what they wanted, but that we've just kind of not demonstrated
A
any,
realistic number.
yeah.
And there is a
That we-
deadline, right?
Yes, the applications are submitted by May 1st to
Okay.
the clerk's
So-
office,
And
and she,
everyone met that criteria.
But if we prorated it, there wouldn't be any people coming in later saying we didn't get in.
no, yeah, we did that because in the past, that's what would happen, they would come throughout the year, and so kind of the first people in usually got all the money.
Yeah.
So that's why we went to the May 1st deadline by board
Because you hit on
direction.
exactly what I wanted to talk about before we did the first one is, we got one for 122,000. There's only 50,000 in there, so.
I think the comment was already made, and I don't think there's any question, all worthy causes. This isn't going to be a very popular question, but when you think about like performance to me is like number of visits. It's not necessarily financially, like if they were doing well financially, these requests would probably be far less. And again, the expectation isn't necessarily that all turn a profit. I'm more thinking about the community impact that they have. Or, for example, how much are the cities where they're located donating towards these entities as well? Like, do we request or require any of those specifics? How many total visitors, local?
We don't have any of those stipulations on their requests. I know last year when this came up, there was discussion about that they felt like it should be matching funds so that the organization should be able to demonstrate that they receive at least the amount that they're asking for in matching funds throughout the year. I think typically these organizations wouldn't exist if they weren't getting more than what they're asking for us, because while $7,000 isn't chump change, that's not going to keep the doors open on one of these facilities and for the year, so.
And that's what I was going to bring up next is, what I was wanting to recommend is we simply prorate this across the board, because it's hard to come up with how many visitors they get per, some of them have that information, some I know don't. I was going to suggest prorate it across the board and do a matching funds, even though I'm sure they take in more than what they're asking for by the time we prorate this. But make sure they know that
Right.
we expect them to have skin in the game. We're not just, handing them a check.
No, if you think about it, if visits are declining over time, and there is a forecast of close to no visitors at a certain point, and again, I don't know any of those statistics, that's something you'd want to maybe look at or know before you put 7,000 or 10,000 or whatever amount of money into an entity that,
Well, in matching funds, I'm not considering just like the walk-in fees. I'm talking about donations and,
Sure.
total. So I'm sure they all make more than what we'd be giving them, but just want it to be known we're matching funds.
Commissioner Collins?
Well, I would think that would be a fair request next time around, but as we did not make that as a requirement for what we're looking at now to,
that you have to match.
that you have to match, I think that,
Sure.
I don't think we can change boats in the middle of the stream as far as what we are requiring for them to report to us or give to us
Yeah, I agree.
right now,
I agree with you.
because it wasn't asked before.
Sure.
And I, looking at the list of the organizations that have come before us, they all have quite a bit of traffic that go through them, and I think that they're all probably, like I said, they're all, and then some of things, when you say, number of visitors and things like that, some that have requested from us in the past, are not in a position to be able to receive a lot of traffic or people coming in to look at them because they're in restoration mode.
Right.
That's true.
And so,
I think we had two of those last year where
Right.
they weren't even able to open because they needed funds to get, and I
One of
think
them
one
didn't
was,
ask for money this year.
and they didn't ask for any money this year, that's true, yeah.
so I'm just saying that I think that we need to kind of be careful on that part until something is up and running, when they're asking for assistance with, say, helping to put a roof on, or, assistance with putting, installation of lighting, or something to that
AC,
effect, air
heating and
conditioning or
AC,
whatever, HVAC, that,
We can make sure that next year, when we send out the invitation to submit a proposal, that we include in there that they, with that proposal, provide us with the number of visits that they have average per year, and then any matching funds, the amount of matching funds they receive each year, too.
and I think that's a
Or
good idea.
I'll just say donations that they receive. each year.
Donations, I think, would be better, because,
But I would hate to see somebody raise $100,000 and we have to match it.
but we need to, we
No,
have to match.
to match.
How much
I don't
they ha-
think
no, I'm
that's
saying,
what
how
we
much
said.
do you receive in
7,100.
donations per year? Because, to say matching funds, I think we also need to look for what level of donations you have, because that shows community buy-in.
Exactly.
If you're saying matching funds, I used to be able to do that quite easily by what I received in grants.
Sure.
So, and
Not
vice
to
versa,
exceed.
so we
Matching
need to
funds,
do a
not
not
to
to
exceed.
exceed, or we just, it doesn't even need to be that. We just need to see, what is the level of public support for what you're doing? Because you can usually see that in the amount of money that they raise in donations, either through fundraisers
Well,
or through United Way contributions, what is the amount that they're receiving? You can get kind of an idea of the level of community support. Because if we don't have community buy-in, then an organization probably is not going to be able to survive over time.
Second that.
Right.
but we can definitely put that as a requirement going forward if it's the board's desire.
So last year, we started out with Tonganoxie first, and I believe they got $8,000, is that correct, for the roof?
I
And
I don't
then
remember.
we ended up giving everybody else 10,000?
I don't remember, I don't remember the number that we gave to the Tonganoxie, but that sounds about right.
Can we add that as a criteria as
They didn't
well?
ask for 10,000, they.
How much they received the prior year?
We have that information.
Well, I know we have it, I'm just saying as a part of the
For next
formal
year, for next
submittal.
year.
Yeah, just so you can see a comparison.
You had $50,000 last year also.
Right.
So that's all you've had for the last 2 years, and that did continue through the budget process on a max amount of money in the historical museums.
Yeah, I think for us, it's helpful to know if they've never requested, they've requested every year. Last year, they received X.
Yeah, we can certainly.
Previous funding levels from the county.
We can get that.
So would it be the consensus of the board that we listen to all the requests before we put a value on them? That'd be okay? We went ahead and listed all the requests? and
You
then
can
we-
handle that any way you'd like. I think
All right.
Commissioner Culbertson had made the recommendation. I don't know if it was a motion, though.
to divide
I didn't make a
it.
motion, but I
That's a
just
consensus of the
suggested.
board to just listen to everybody, and then we'll decide how we divvy up the money. Okay, all right. Sorry for the delay, ma'am.
That's quite okay.
All right.
Good morning, my name is Joanna Schultz, and I'm a board member for the Richard Allen Culture Center. And Miss Edna Wagner is out of town on a family emergency, so I'm going to represent the museum today.
Right.
So we are requesting funds for some restoration for our museum as well as lighting. We use the museum, it's open Monday through Saturday. Saturdays tours are by appointment. And so we use the museum every day during the week. We also provide a tutoring program for the youth in Leavenworth, and we tutor kindergarten through 12th grade. Our tutors are provided by retired teachers as well as supported by the ROCKS, which is an organization from Fort Leavenworth of officers who come in for the Command and General Staff course. I am open for your questions.
Commissioners have any questions of Joanna?
I just would say for anybody who's never been to the Richard Allen Cultural Center, you're really missing out on something and you should go.
Yes, we house artifacts from members, African-American members of the Leavenworth County community. We house the artifacts and have many of their stories on records. We continue to acquire new artifacts all the time. Just last Friday, a gentleman brought in a saddle that has been in his family from a Buffalo soldier who was assigned to Fort Leavenworth. So what we're asking for is money to improve, one, the lighting, as well as we want to restore the floors in the original house back to their condition. When we acquired the house as part of the museum, it was, of course, families lived in it and there's old carpeting on the floor, which needs to be taken up. It's quite old and has quite a bit of damage through the years. So we're doing the best we can. We fundraise throughout the year to raise money to support the museum.
What's the address of the museum?
It's 412 Kiowa. It's actually on 4th, right next to Lawson Elementary School.
Oh, okay.
What's your total budget?
I actually can't remember. I did not bring our treasury report with me, being the stand-in, but we are a nonprofit, so our budget is...
Do you get funding from the city of Leavenworth?
Yes, we have put in for the grants before from the city of Leavenworth, from tourism. I believe it's from the tourism. And that grant has usually been used for advertisement. That's been kind of the stipulation.
You know how much that was?
I believe it was $5,000 one year.
This may be another difficult one to ask, but I'll ask anyway. Any idea maybe what the total visitors might have looked like even last year, like 2018?
Last year, we had over 1,000 visitors, and we continue to grow. We're starting to get school tours in as well as out-of-town tours who come in to follow the Buffalo Soldiers. And we host an event every year for Buffalo Soldiers who come throughout the country. It's a big bike ride and picnic that we host at the Richard Allen Culture Center.
Very cool.
Thanks.
Any other questions, Joanna? All right, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, we're ready for Baser Historical Museum.
Hi, I'm Lila White with the Baser Historical Museum Society. Haven't done this before, so anyway, we've been...
Welcome.
We just celebrated last October our 10th anniversary. 11 years ago, we renovated the building down on 155th Street that was donated to us, and I was one of the volunteers that spent a year, renovating the entire building. We had all sorts of people from the community volunteering, putting the HVAC systems in, and the wall top, everything you can imagine, and sanding and all that. So we still have a good-sized crew. We've lost some of them over time, but it's purely volunteer. We only ask for donations when people come in the door. So there's no admission. And we do have some fundraisers. We have a ladies' tea this coming Saturday, and that in the past has been our biggest fundraiser. But we did have a festival of trees last Christmas, and that did pretty well, and we are excited about that. What we're looking for, basically, when we started the museum, we received Cabela's cast-off mannequins. They literally were in the dumpsters. So I was one of the people that went over to there and picked them out of the dumpster. They told us we could take them, and then hauled them away over to the museum. Well, they were in kind of rough shape to begin with, missing fingers and kind of things. We tried to disguise some of it, or build, or put gloves on, things like that. But we're getting more people in, and it's really neat when people come back into town, or family members, and we'd like to spruce things up a little bit that way. We're also doing more displays. We really only have one display. It's taller than me, but of course I'm short. But we'd like to do more than one display at a time, and those displays are rather expensive. So we're just trying to, I guess, update and just make our displays nicer looking, and then even bring more people in. We only are open 2 days a week, but we're available by appointment anytime, and we have groups come in all the time. And every year the third grade classes come in and tour us, and that's always fun. Are there any questions?
Have any questions, Lila?
What's your total budget?
Let's see, last year, I think it was about, $5,400. And we spent $7,000 on building maintenance and utilities.
Do you get city funding?
Pardon?
Any funding from the city of Basel?
We actually did get $1,000 recently.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, what you're doing.
Thank you. Okay, the next would be the Leavenworth Historical Museum Association.
I was just gonna say that there's the baser, that's the hiccup in my proposition, is they're not asking for $7,000 if we prorated equally.
Up to 7,000.
So if we
Yeah.
give the smaller ones what they want, then divide it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody else is asking for more than
Right, you're
1.7.
saying meet the request if below the budgeted amount.
Yeah,
per
everybody
entity,
else is over
and then
that
divide
1.7.
the overages, yes.
Kind of what happened last year when we did go over a little bit.
Actually, we gave at least one organization more than they were asking for last year because they just divided it.
And that,
Right.
yeah, and that's what I was saying.
Except for Tonganoxie.
That's
They
right.
got their original.
That's
they
right.
asked, They got the short end there.
So we could either stick with prorating it or, make a,
Whatever we decide to do, I'm
Right.
just saying that that's
Right,
just
right,
one
right.
way of,
I do.
I think each one gets this amount.
Okay, my name is John Sanders, and I'm the president of the board of directors of the Leavenworth Historical Museum Association. And let me just make a distinction here. The Leavenworth Historical Museum Association is a non-profit or not-for-profit organization. And we've been organized here in town, and we were authorized by the city of Leavenworth in 1988. But the Leavenworth Historical Museum Association consists of 3 museums: the C.W. Parker Museum, the National Fred Harvey Museum, and the First City Museum. And today, I took it that I was to appear here to talk about the First City Museum, its activities and requests for funds that we put in for last year. I think I'm correct. Is that correct?
Well, and you're also Carousel, right?
Well, no, we have National Fred Harvey Museum chairperson and the carousel
Okay.
person
Here.
that are last on the list.
Okay.
So you've got us in three different presentations.
Okay.
And I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
Okay, and I didn't bring today the statistics for the overall organization of Leavenworth Historical Museum Association, but our association, I'm sure that all of you know that, over the years, we built the 100 by 200 by 35-foot freestanding building for the carousel, which now houses, and they'll tell you about it, the 1914 wooden carousel built here in Leavenworth, a 1950 carousel built here in Leavenworth, and the oldest intact carousel that we know about in the United States, which was made in the state of Maryland in 1850. And then, of course, we acquired the home of Fred Harvey, and that's where we have the National Fred Harvey Museum, and it has a museum that's been worked on for several years now, and the chairperson will talk about that. And then, of course, we have the First City Museum. Now, I passed out a few pictures to you so you could kind of see some of the 1,600 artifacts that we have in the museum. Currently, we've had, this past year, we had about 850 visitors that come to the museum, and most of the visitors that come there are very interested in the prisons, both the federal and the state prisons. And we have very good mock-ups of both of those prisons, which were made by inmates approximately in 1961. But as you look at the pictures, the very first one that's on there is the thing that I want to talk about today, and that's the AC unit, which is original to the building of the First City Museum, which was built in 1957. It was a grocery store at that time, and it's a 10,000 BTU unit. It doesn't have any efficiency at all. It's very expensive to run, and we're in dire need of getting a new system there. And when we put a request in, we requested, well, the estimate that we had is for $17,625. And we would hope that we'd get a portion of that. And of course, we do have funds and means to match the amount of money that you've given us. Like, for example, last year, you gave us $10,000, and we spent about $12,500 replacing the lighting systems in the east and the west hall, and we replaced those with LED lights, which are much more efficient and give out a lot more lighting. And we really appreciate that $10,000 that you gave us last year, because it improved the function of the museum greatly. Just as the AC unit that we're asking money for this year will improve the operation also. Just to mention the museum, the pictures that you've got there, you can see that the First City Museum really displays a lot of the manufacturing, such as Great Western Manufacturing Company, Great Western Stove Company, Abernathy Furniture, Helmer's Furniture, Kramer Manufacturing, on and on. Also the prison systems that we have great displays of. And it's not only large manufacturing and business in town, but we can also have artifacts from things like the Victory washer machine company that was manufactured washing machines here in the late 1800s. We have washers that are on display. And we have a broom machine that was from the broom factory that was actually made brooms here in Leavenworth and also. And you can see the pictures that I showed you, like the Great Western Stove Company. We have a lot of artifacts from the Great Western Company. And you can see the mural that we have that's painted up on the wall, which is a picture of the actual Great Western Stove Company showroom. So we get a lot of, like I say, we get a lot of people that come to the museum that really are interested in the prisons. And basically, most of them, we ask them how they get their information, and they say they pick it up from the website. And we've had people come from many different places to look at those. Also, I'd like to point out, too, that the Kansas Central boxcar that's on the outside of the building which we now verified is one of three pieces of the Kansas Central Railroad, which was created here in Leavenworth in 1872. So the museum itself is to depict, this portion of the museum, of our museum, is to depict really the activities since the beginning of the city of Leavenworth, which is the first city in Kansas. And like I say, we have lots of artifacts and things to do that. We have a lot of artifacts too about different social organizations, and one of them that people seem to be interested in is the Ladies Ku Klux Klan organization, which was organized here and operated in the early 1920s, I think from like 1923 to 28. But there's a lot of things in the museum that I think are make us reminisce a lot of good and bad things, I guess, of the city of Leavenworth. So we really appreciate, like I say, the money that you gave us last year, because that really helped us out with the LED lights, and we'd hope to improve our air conditioning system this year. And have you, any questions?
Any questions of John?
I just wondered do you know on you said you don't have the information, but do you know what the budgets are for the three museums?
Oh, gosh, I wished I would have known. I could have brought that with me. But, for example, I'm sure you've all heard of the Taste of Leavenworth, which just recently in Leavenworth Times, we were voted as one of the runner-ups for, entertainment in Leavenworth. That, every year since we've had that 17 years in a row, has brought us in someplace between $18,000 and probably about $21,000. But I'd like to point out that basically that amount of money is about what we take to Plot's insurance agency to pay for the insurance, because insurance for the carousel and the other museums, I can guarantee you, is very expensive. And it runs well over $20,000 a year. When the C.W. Parker comes up, they'll talk about the small mall that they have every year, and that's bringing in, I mean, we're really proud of that, and the way the citizens have really participated in that, and that's usually bringing in, and I'm sure Tony will tell you about it, but well over $10,000 a year. That's been a very, very popular thing, and of course, he'll tell you all about the bus tours and everything for the Carousel Museum.
John, or just to help me out, or maybe you've explained it and I've just missed it, the intersect of the three organizations that kind of roll up into this one centralized, I mean, are all four operated independently as far as different budgets would go?
Well, all four of them have committee chairpersons.
Okay.
All four of them have not all four of them, all three of them have their budgets and operate really almost independently. Now, of course, if we need money from one side to the other, that's what the board has to negotiate and talk about. But originally, when the city of Leavenworth authorized the museum system, we organized with the name of the Leavenworth Historical Museum Association.
Okay.
That was back in 1988.
Because you had mentioned like 800 visitors at one time, and I'm like...
Well, that's just for the First City Museum.
Right.
That's not including the people that...
So each of the other locations can provide their visitor counts and all that, okay.
Absolutely. And the big one, of course, is going to be the CW Carousel, because we all know that the people that bus in, and of course the bus tour people love the Carousel Museum, because it doesn't make any difference what your age is. If you get on that carousel and ride it, I'll guarantee you, when you get off, you'll have a big grin on your face. And so, we brought a lot of people to Leavenworth because of that. And I don't want to talk too much because Tony's here and he's going to be talking to you directly about the CW Carousel Museum.
And this will tell you how many people in this room are from Leavenworth if you ask them how many people have black and white pictures of them or their kids on these bears.
Sure.
Yeah, I put that on the front page because everybody that comes to the museum that's like about 50 years old, look at those bears. Oh my God.
You have a
Bears in the plaza. Those are the ones from the Leavenworth Plaza. And I when I was a kid. And there's a lot of things in the museum that people recognize.
What happened to the daddy bear?
That's a good question. When they called us and asked us if we'd be interested in them, I went out there and they told me at one time, the plaza had the Bears refurbished. And some way after that, I guess the Papa Bear,
Didn't make it?
Didn't make it.
He didn't make it?
Didn't get
Okay.
But if you look at the other two bears, they're in excellent condition and kids like them. And that's a
slippery.
big part of the children's display room that we have.
Questions?
Any more questions for John?
You did get some funding through the city of Leavenworth as well.
We got funding initially, okay? When we first built the carousel building and we got the other buildings, we did then, but we don't get, like an annual fee or anything from the city. Now, like I say, we got, I remember we got a grant because of the way the building was constructed, we had to put that big walkway in front of the building, and that was like $45,000. And the city helped us with a grant for that, for the building. Plus the fact that they gave us the property that the building sits on. But I can tell you now that we do our accounting by cash, and we have over $1 million just in that building alone, with the building and the artifacts, not counting the other buildings that we own. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Again, we really appreciate the money from last year, and we hope that we can get our air conditioning going this year again. And we thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Leavenworth County Historical Society and Carroll House Museum.
Hi, good morning. My name is Lisa Weekly, and this morning I'm representing the Leavenworth County Historical Society and the Carroll Mansion. We put in a request to you for to help us out with the replacement of our porches. As of lately, we've tried to apply for a Kansas Heritage Trust grant for the last 3 years, and we've been turned down for that. When Mike, our previous president of the Historical Society, wrote to you, we were in application for that and turned down again for that. So that's why his letter initially starts out, because they do require a matching grant request. That request would have been around over $18,000, almost $19,000 for those matching funds. But sadly, we did not get that. So right now, our porches, especially through the winter, they've become very deteriorated. We have a section of the porch that is actually closed off, and it's not very noticeable. We've managed to do it very cleverly with a little picket fence and strategic placing of our wicker furniture that's usually on the porch on that. It's the round circle area that you'll see at the front of the building on that. That seems to sustain, just the way it's structured, a lot of water damage over time on that. So the floor has become very fragile to walk on, and so we've sealed that off. That has been replaced. It's been well over 10 years now. The other porches, though, in addition to that one that wrap around the front, do need additional work on that. In the past, it wasn't required, and why our sum on that is $94,904. In the past, it would have required just regular wood to use as like people do on their porches. Now the historical state of Kansas allows us to use, like, you can't use the word Trex, but it's a Trex-like product. And I think over time they've seen the merits that it would be less deterioration at a slower pace, it lasts longer, and they've now approved a use of a product like that. So unfortunately, that does drive up the cost. You get longer wear of it, less maintenance, but a higher price tag, unfortunately. The other urgent need that we do, especially also since the winter, is the exterior painting of our trim, and we've even noticed it more on the outside. It's a brick structure outside, but if you look at all of the white paint that's there, there's various spots on the building that are starting to get rot in it that needs spot replacement on that. The painting of the trim on that would be, the estimate amount on that we received is $22,000. We put those as our priority request because they're the maintenance issues of the museum that's needed on that. Obviously, we know that $94,000 is exceeding even the $50,000 that the grant is for. We are hoping for a portion of that, and since we did not get that grant, we've looked for other avenues on how we can tackle this big problem. There's options of us, but again, time is against us on that. The option of that is tax credits. The drawbacks on that, we wouldn't be able to start on any of the work until after the tax credits, and that would be like a fundraising campaign. It's a campaign to do that. The other option is to continue to do fundraisers and then break that down into sections. And that's almost what we're facing right now, is to break the porch down into different sections over a period of time and work on a section apiece on that. So right now, that seems the most realistic way to do that. And still in search for other sources, for other grants to do that. We are pursuing that. We have other grant besides the Heritage Trust that we're going to try for. But again, as time deteriorates, it's pretty much against us for that. With the Historical Society, you've asked a number of questions. What we bring to the community is we've been in existence since 1954. The Carroll Mansion came to us in 1964. So we've been preserving the county history since that time. It's typical, your typical Victorian house that you would come in as rooms set up that was designed in the 1880s to show what life was like back then. But we're really so much more than that. And we are only seen as a house museum. People come to us, authors and that. Our biggest asset to the community, not only our education programs that we do, but also the research that we offer. We have authors that come to us, scholars that come to us, professors that do research, the average citizen that wants to research their home, their new home that they've purchased on that. We've been the repository for the county artifacts, your artifacts here, and records for those years since we've been in existence on that. Every month we offer an educational program. This month, and I'd invite you all to attend, on June 15th, we're highlighting this year because it's the 100th anniversary of the passing of the 19th Amendment for women getting the right to vote. We're doing a program on, excuse me, I'm kind of froggy from allergies. We're doing a program on the suffrage movement here in Leavenworth County that we had surprisingly several nationally known representatives of the abolition and the suffrage movement come here to Leavenworth, Kansas, and working for women to win the right to vote on that. So it's going to be a pretty surprising program. I hope you'll be able to attend. Our fundraisers, and I encourage you to attend, participate, and please donate if you can, is July 12th. Our latest fundraiser will be the Wild West Casino Night on that, and our other fundraisers that we do is we're adding a new one this year, keeping in our theme with the women's suffrage movement. we're doing a women's yellow tea, and you'd have to attend that to find out a little bit more about that. We've got a phenomenal speaker for that, Professor Bell, who's just recently wrote a book on the Chautauquas that were held, and Chautauquas are kind of like, it's a new term for me, but many people do know what it is, that were held here in Leavenworth and Leavenworth County and in Kansas on educating people on different issues such as temperance, women's suffrage, women's rights, social issues on that. She's going to be our speaker there, so we're very excited about that. You've asked questions about our budget and our traffic that we have. I can ask questions on that if you have specifically. Our traffic last year for our tours were 1,847 was our traffic count for people coming to visit the museum last year. That was a little down. It'll probably be up a little bit more this year. Last year, we did not receive as many bus tours through the CVB, but that seems to be on the rise again this year, so we're really happy about that. Our tours are, a significant part of our income for us, so we're happy to see that people are starting to get out and enjoy history again. Can I answer any questions about our budget? Like that? Sorry.
What did you say your total budget was?
Pardon? I'm
Your
sorry.
total budget, what was it?
Our total budget, if you look at probably last year, our income statement and our balance sheet, well, it's mostly the house and our collections that make up the majority of our assets. Our revenue that we do need to generate needs to be in the neighborhood of 100,000 to a little over 100,000 on that to sustain us on that.
So it's about 100,000.
Yeah, about a third of that comes from our fundraisers. Out of those, we have funds that we have that support our operations as we need it. But basically, it's our tours, our fundraisers, and our research and other fees that we do, and donations of our membership, bequests, that all make up our income.
You get money from the city of Leavenworth?
We, like many of the organizations through the CVB, we apply for grants and we receive support on that. I'd like to point out, though, too, you've talked a bit about that, because it's through the Convention and Visitors Bureau, it has to be tourism related. And our needs now, they cannot be for brick and mortar or daily operations. When you apply for CVB, their requirements are it has to bring tourism into the city of Leavenworth. So when we use their funds, it is for, like our fundraisers, say with our Vintage Homes Tour, because that does bring tourism to the city from outside of the city. It promotes that. It promotes their hotel, too. People stay overnight on that. So we get support through fundraisers on that. Signage, they've helped us because that's advertising to get tourism into Leavenworth. So there's strings attached with that. It's a restrictive request.
Any other questions, Lisa? Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks.
We're ready for Tonganoxie now. Tonganoxie community.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us back again. You got my wordy letter. You got our program. We are most excited this year. Oh, I'm Chris Roberts, 201 West Washington, Tonganoxie, Kansas. That's the museum address. We're most excited this year because we did get a grant from Humanities Kansas, a little under $5,000, which we are matching. They allow a match in our time. So volunteer time is allowed to be a match. We're doing some cash donations to that as well. We're going to develop the spring that was on Frank Fairchild's farm. As we've started working on this for the past 6 weeks, we're coming across some pretty cool stuff, like a map that shows a little dog leg off of the Leavenworth Lawrence Road that actually went right to the spring, which might help document that the spring was used. And I need to talk to you more about that. But anyway, so we are developing the spring. Humanities Kansas is paying for 3 really nice exterior signs at the spring. They're paying for Rex Buchanan, state geologist, to help us with the wording on the sign, to do a program and to do research. We have a historian doing research. So those things are coming together really nicely, and we're excited about that. What we would like to do and what we've asked you all to do is to help us with creating a path off of our gravel driveway. It would be another gravel drive with some parking areas so that people can go there and park. You can see on the map, the spring is not that far from the farm, but we get a lot of people who just aren't able to walk that well. So of our request, 5,000 would be for that new gravel drive, parking area, some trees. We'd like to get some trees going there. And then 2,000 is to bring more rock in for our drive and parking lot. We started that work in the spring when we had to. So we've spent about 1,000, and if we need to spend more, we'll spend more. We just have to drive back. We have been around since 1981. Our yearly budget now is about $40,000. Last year, that budget did include about $15,000 worth of grant monies, what we got from the county. And we do often, as long as our requests are approved, get about the same amount, about $7,000 from the Leidy grant, which is a Tonganoxie grant. City of Tonganoxie does not give money to us. And so the rest of our money is raised through fundraisers, through use of our facilities by the community, and donations and memorials.
You answered every question I have, but where, can you answer this? Is Chief Tonganoxie still buried out at the Kelly Farm?
Yes, and he was not a chief.
Oh, he was not a chief?
He was not a chief.
Oh, ouch.
The Delaware in the Klan asked that he be a chief, and the United States Department of Indian Affairs, in their vast wisdom, never acted on what the Delaware wanted, and instead, and I don't have all the names, appointed another Delaware as chief of Tonganoxie's clan, from a different clan. So,
we'll
there
still
you
call
go.
him chief.
Times 50, better left alone.
Just a quick question. So has the city of Tonganoxie been asked and just,
Since I've been there in the last 5 years, no, we have not asked.
okay.
But the Tonga area has that Leidy grant. I know a lot of
And-
people that apply for that and receive funding.
The Leidy grant generally has $60,000 to $70,000 available, 50 to 60, and it goes to any nonprofit. So, and it's a really great thing for the city. School district gets a lot. It's a good thing.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Now we're ready for Fred Harvey Museum.
Good morning, I'm Jeannie Hazels, and I'm chairperson of the Fred Harvey Home and Museum. The home was built in 1869 and was purchased by Fred in 1883. It's at 624 Olive, and a beautiful old mansion, 12 rooms and 3 stories. When we received it, it was in pretty much disrepair, with a lot of renovation on the inside, as well as starting with the roof down. Right now, we have volunteers, and I'm asking for money for doors and chandeliers. We found 3 doors in the basement that I have a volunteer that's restoring them, and hopefully he'll be able to do that. And then the others we need for requests for money. I think that this home adds a lot to the county, and as well as Leavenworth. Being the first city in Kansas, I feel like this is a wonderful thing that people can come and visit. We can have functions there, they can tour it, and I do have tours there now, just so they can see our progress.
Anyone have any questions for Jeannie?
No, but I do have one thing. Wasn't that at one point in time the home of community corrections? The
Yes,
Harvey
it
House?
was.
Just as a
First-
history with the county.
Right, well, in 44, it was
And the health
Barbara, after Fred died in '01, Barbara gave it to the Cushing nurses, and that was their dormitory, and they'd walk to the hospital and work. Then, I don't have all the dates here with me.
Oh, it's all right.
But then it was given to the school board, and then it was given to the
Health-
county.
right.
And in those times, different rooms
Health
were
department.
actually, walls were taken down and cubicles were
Right.
put in. So anytime anybody wants to see it, we've made some great, great progress, but it is like any old structure, it takes a lot.
Yeah, community corrections was in the building, and then the carriage house was the health
Right.
department.
Right. No,
It
that's
was
what I said. It
the-
was
Yeah.
just.
So you guys aren't
infirmary
open,
that would give it.
so you guys aren't open for operation yet?
No,
though,
but
right?
I have requests for people to come and they can walk through and see our progress. We
Okay.
work there, and we're all volunteers, and most of them have hair like me, so we're not young chickens.
When do you expect to be open for?
We hope to have the first floor by the end of this year, just the first floor, which is the kitchen, the dining room, and 2 parlors.
How many, are there Harvey girls still in Leavenworth?
Not living.
Are there in the area?
No.
No.
No. Mm-mm. But I did receive an interesting thing. A friend, her mother died, and one of her best friends was a Harvey girl, and it's a whiskey bottle, and it has Fred Harvey written on it, so it must have been in one of the lunch counters or one of the restaurants that he had through the years.
Have you guys talked to, there's another Harvey House in Winoka, Oklahoma? Have you talked to them at all?
Well, this is the only house he lived in. So that would be the train depot or station where he had lunch counters
Okay.
or
Yeah.
hotels.
Oh, okay.
So
I've been there.
this
That's
is
what I'm
the
talking
only
about.
house
Right.
he ever lived in, and he raised his 5 children in.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. I just know they called it the Harvey Museum.
Well, they have different, yeah.
Okay.
They're all under his organization that he established.
Do you typically have any events, like during the year that,
I've had some requests for people to have birthday parties there. And so we will set up, because we don't have any furniture in, but we've been lucky enough when people's parents have passed away that have that period furniture that nobody wants anymore, they have given it to us, which we appreciate and have stored in a different location.
now, one time they were going to put a train car out on your property. Did that ever materialize,
That's the other
or?
museum. That's the other
Wait,
museum.
It looks like there might be
No,
an
because
answer.
we used to live across the street from the Harvey House. But when they first,
Before my time, I guess.
it was
I'm not
Lee and
sure.
Shirley Steiger were, anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Oh, well, inside, we will have a train set up in one of the bedrooms, which was a bedroom then, but we don't have enough furniture for all the bedrooms to be.
I think it'll be really cool when you get it done.
It is, and it'll be a wonderful place for people to come and have functions, and we'll have just a warming kitchen there for people to have caterers come in. So it will bring in a lot. And I have people call all the time because there's different books that have been written of Fred Harvey, and so people have an interest in him. And when you think about it, he was the first one with the chain restaurants.
Yeah.
Started and gave women an opportunity to come west and work. which-
He civilized the railroad restaurant industry.
He did.
Jeannie, I don't know if this is a fair question for you, and I'm assuming it applies to most, if not all, but, you know, being on the historical registry gives obviously a lot of tax favorability. Now, as a non-taxable entity, all you can do with those tax credits is sell them right, to the private sector. I mean, that's what I've typically seen done. Do we try to formalize that in any way and try to use all of these different entities to market to the private sector just to help, again, move some of these projects along? Maybe that's a better question for John than you, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to
Yeah,
that. John?
Let me just mention that, yes, we have used tax credit programs. And
So, wait.
well, it's now called the Exchange Bank. But when it was the first, what was the name? Anyway, whatever it was before the Exchange Bank, we had some, God, I can't remember, it was like right about $100,000 worth of tax credits, and they bought them from us at the bank, and of course used them. And I'd just like to mention, since the year 2000, since the county gave us the building, you know, I kind of mentioned to you that the deal was either you take the building or we're going to raise it. So we said, oh no, we can't have that, so we took the building. But through tax credits, through different fund raising programs, grants that we got originally, we put over $300,000 into that building. And it started from the roof down, putting the dormers back in, redoing the heating and cooling system, and completely going through the building. And if anybody has a chance, I'm sure Jeannie would love to show you, because right now she's working on the floors in the first floor of the building. And it's just, you know, I mean, it's been slow because it takes a lot of time to raise that kind of money.
Well, as I understand it, it's everything that's structural, right? So if you were to take a building and flip it over, anything that would fall out doesn't qualify, right? But structurally, it's roofs, it's decks,
Before we
it's...
could get any grants or anything else, we had to have an architectural survey that was done, and that cost us $35,000 to make sure that the building was a substantial building and it was worth refurbishing. And we paid for that, $35,000 for that architectural survey in the beginning. So, and like I say, lots of work has been done to it since that time. But it takes a lot of work when the building is kind of gotten in the shape
Sure.
it was when we received it.
Okay.
But it's a good project. People know about Harvey, you know, all over the world. You know, we get emails from, you know, you name it, every place. And to mention that the Harvey House and the train stations, if sometime you come to the gift shop and take a look there, we have books and we can show you pictures of all the different Harvey houses and train stations and the Pullman cars and the Pullman organization and all that stuff that's associated with Fred Harvey and the work that he did to really help build the southwestern United States of America. And we've got a lot of artifacts there too that are from the southwestern motif that they collected. Anyway, I just had to mention that to you.
All right.
Is this by appointment? If we want to bring a group, we just get a hold of you? All right.
I call us the Faithful Four. We're there every week working, some volunteers and myself.
Well, thank you for that. That's going to be fantastic.
I think it'll be a nice asset to the city. Thank you.
Any other questions of Jeannie?
Should I ask the board or?
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, C.W. Parker Carousel Museum.
The tornado victims, they want to live in an RV, and then while building their...
Oh, they want to live on the side.
Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Tony Baker.
Morning.
I chair the steering committee for the C.W. Parker Carousel Museum. Just a short, brief history of the museum. We opened in April of 2005. The average number of visitors annually is about 24,000. Last year we had visitors of almost 29,000. Last couple of years have been increased considerably from the average. We have several party rooms within the building that we rent out to residents of the county and anyone that wants to have receptions or promotion parties and that kind of deal. Our museum has 3 operating carousels, and the second floor is devoted to Parker horses and the Parker memorabilia. Our museum draws visitors from all over the country. Just recently, last Tuesday and Wednesday, the Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association held their annual convention in Kansas City, Missouri. They had about 1,000 members attend the convention, and they were given options for the different venues in Kansas City, which are many real nice museums and things like that. And they were given a pick list of places they wanted to go. And out of the 1,000 members, we felt privileged to have 200 come up from Kansas City just to see the Carousel Museum. We do have fundraisers throughout the year. We have the Family Fun Nights a couple times a year, which generate, some of them are up to close to $1,000 per night. And of course, we have the Children's Small Mo, which is in December, where families are able to come in and buy Christmas presents for siblings, moms, dads, grandma, grandpa, that kind of stuff. At reduced prices from $3, $5, and $7. The items are gift wrapped so that the parents who bring the children in, they have no idea what they're getting until Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. And our feedback from that is often is quite funny because they just cannot figure out why, grandchild thought they needed, whatever they got. And that fundraiser generates somewhere in the vicinity of $20 plus $1,000 during that one weekend. I've got a lot of statistics. I did not break up an operating statement or a budget. Never been asked for that before over here, but we'll gladly get that to you if you like. We sort of started off last year with a plan for 3 years. When we built our building in '04, the idea was that if we went all electric using heat pumps, that was the way to go. Back then, over the years, our utilities just skyrocketed. And doing some research starting last year, determined that heat pumps are great if you're down south or out to the west. They're only good for about the maximum heating, air conditioning, or heating is down to about 50 degrees outside. After that, it drops considerably as far as efficiency. When it gets down to freezing, it's practically nil. So our 2018 grant request was to convert the heat pump in our central area, which is the museum area on the bottom floor where the gift shop is and our counter. We converted that to natural gas, and during the last winter months, January through April, based on comparison to last year, we saved a little over $2,500 just in that 4-month period. We think it could easily be more than that because we thought that probably the weather this year was worse than the previous year just because of the number of days where it never got above freezing, or quite a few days it never got above zero. And so we're looking forward to additional savings from that. And that money we can use for refurbishing displays, fine artifacts, and that kind of stuff. Also in 2018, the museum paid to convert about 70% of our lighting to LEDs. And this money was designated specifically for that person by several of our benefactors. The grant request that we put in this year for 2019 is to continue our upgrades and to convert the heat pump on the north end of the building to gas, and also to replace the air conditioning that went out. We will place the air conditioning coils on top of the furnaces that we get from this grant. And that will give us heating and air conditioning on the north end of the building. We are a totally volunteer organization. We have no paid employees. The additional cost of the air conditioning and is being paid by, again, someone that designated the money goes specifically for air conditioning that part of the building. We're always welcome to invite the commissioners down to look the facility over and see what we have, if you haven't been down before. And we're hoping for your consideration for our grant request for this year. Any questions, I'll try to answer. But I did not bring up a balance sheet.
I won't ask you
apologize for that.
Any questions? No question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Commissioners heard all the requests, know how much money we have. Any suggestions?
Gave mine.
What's that, just divide it?
Yep.
Would be like, be the 7,000 and the 2370, grant that, and then the rest about 8,000 apiece. Is that kind of what?
Well, I mean,
Even
unless you want
above
to
and
go,
beyond, like we had a couple that were lower requests.
just one that was lower.
But that's what they actually asked, and that's what their actual needs are.
Yeah. So you're just saying flat out divide it? Or give them
Meet-
the
meet-
request?
meet the
and
request.
Meet the
and then
request
divide
of the
rest.
2370 with the Tonganox,
All
or
right.
Baser.
And
then
7,000.
Tonganoxie had 7,000.
So those two are less than a.
Right.
Or less, and then just give
Be about-
$8,000 each.
Be about $8,100 left over per.
I said about it.
Pretty close. It's pretty close.
I mean, it's up, I mean, or, you know, I just,
Yeah,
and we could
I
just
think
divide
that's
it
a good
evenly
idea.
and,
So, we're gonna make a motion?
I don't know. Let's see, what would the motion be? To divide the amount available for the grants to the historical organizations
Equally.
equally. However, for the two organizations that requested less than what an equal distribution would be, that we meet their request, and then the remaining money be divided equally among the.
I think we understand the motion.
That's what I said. It's, okay.
Okay,
Well, we can't, if you want to divide it equally, then everybody gets the same amount, and some people get more than what they requested, which
Right.
is not.
No, that-
So,
No, you're
okay,
good.
all right, that's my motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you for all your presentations. Do we need to reschedule Mr. Spickelmeyer or move him?
I'm available. I
Well,
released the
yeah.
superintendents, they had work that day.
Director of Public Works in charge of all this storm cleanup. I really feel bad about having you sit in here for a couple hours.
The road bridge superintendent is gonna handle the new meeting. We've got it covered.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Dale.
okay. We're ready for planning and zoning?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This is case number DEV-19-062. This is a request for a temporary special use permit for the Tonganoxie Library Run. This is an annual 5-10K run. It is their primary annual fundraising event. This has been before the board previously. There are not any changes from last year or the previous years. Staff recommends approval of this request, subject to conditions, and we'll answer any questions that you may have.
Don't have any questions. I do it every year for Tongi Days, and so I guess we'll open up the public hearing portion of this. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the Tonganoxie Library run? How are you today, Mr. Freese?
Hi, David.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is David Freese with Friends of the Tonganoxie Library. As Planning and Zoning told you, this is our main fundraiser for the year. We're expecting about 300 runners on Saturday, plus about 100 volunteers. And over the last 5 years or so, we've raised about, between this and the Sunflower Run, we've raised about $60,000 for the library. This year, there has been discussion among friends of our library to give a portion of whatever's after our costs to residents and kids of Linwood who may have lost books in the tornadoes. That has not been finalized, but that is, I think that's probably what we're going to do with some of it.
Okay. Tonganoxie will be having a new library built soon.
When's that going to be done? I'm not certain when it will be finished, but our groundbreaking is Saturday at 10 in the morning, if you'd like to come, after you run the race, of course. You can walk if you need to.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Freese? Thank you.
Thank you. May I say one other thing?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Stephen, I just wanted to thank you for all the work you did for Linwood and the folks down there. You got a lot of information out and helped a lot of people, and I was really proud to have you as our commissioner down there during this time. Thank you.
Yeah, well, he wasn't the only commissioner down there.
I'm sure he wasn't.
Commissioner Smith was there.
No, Doug was down there too.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this library run? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the library run? Then we'll close public hearing, return to regular session. Entertain a motion.
Do we need to include the waive?
It's a not-for-profit deal,
The fee, because it's not for profit.
the fee.
Or is that automatic now?
No, you,
Well, I think that's our plan, is for it to be automatic, but we haven't got.
Right, we haven't.
It's not for profit, it's, yeah.
It is automatically
It's
waived.
automatic.
I thought we had to make a motion, it seems like
I thought we
most
kinda
all of them
decided
have
they
been
were gonna-
not-for-profit, we've made a
That-
We
motion.
if it
haven't,
was
changed the
not-for-profit.
regulations yet, but that's usually the board will.
The direction you gave us
Right.
previously was that nonprofits would not be charged, so.
okay, so we don't have to put it in the motion, though. Thanks
You
for
don't
what
need
you
it, you don't need it in the motion,
Okay,
you've given us
that's all
that
I wanted to make
direction.
sure.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number DEB 19-062, a temporary special use permit for the Tonganoxie Library Run.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Would part of your motion be running that?
No.
All right. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just stay there.
Last page.
Approve the large appointments, planning commission.
Commissioners, in the consent agenda, you approved the 5 appointments that were district-specific. That was Jay Schwinn, Mark Denny, Steve Rosenthal, Jeanette LeBee Holderman, and Alex Demora. Those 5 positions are now filled. 3 of those people are located inside the city limits in whatever city they live in. So there's only 1 spot left that can be filled by an inside the city limit appointment. I think Becky has a list of all the applicants. There were 3 applicants that came in after the deadline, 2 that came in after the packet went out on Friday. So I have included them on the list, but I just want to make sure that the commission has no problem with including people who came in after the deadline. And that was Mike Getz, Jeff Spink, and Terry Bartkowski.
And one of them in the city. Outside.
So in District 1, Jay Schwinn is already appointed. District 2,
Mark Denny was appointed in District 2.
District 3,
Steve Rosenthal for District 3. District 4 was Jeanette Lebie Holderman. And District 5 was Alex Demora.
okay.
How do we want to handle applications that came in past the deadline? Because I don't have an objection, it doesn't impact me, but I think that if
Commissioner
others
Culberson was
might
short,
have-
right?
Oh,
He
okay.
was
Well, I'm
short
just
of the
saying
deal.
that,
So
Yeah.
we had,
well, I'm just saying that if they came in late, that,
District 4 didn't have one either, so that was,
okay.
that was the reason.
All right, just to make certain, because, there are times when, you extend it, then should you open it up and say anybody else that may
Do we
have
need to
decided they wanted
address the
to?
deadline at all?
So just,
Commissioners, you set that deadline, you can waive it.
okay.
Definitely at your discretion. I just wanted to bring it up because you noticed in the packet, we didn't include those names. That's because they came in after the packet went out.
All
Just
right.
want to make sure it's okay with the commission to include them
the only ones
today.
that came in late were the ones that didn't have
That we needed?
additional.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was making certain of, is that that was the case. All right. So now the battles begin.
So if it's okay to include those, there are any number of ways you can handle filling the 4 at-large positions. Because they are at-large, I think it would be acceptable that any commissioner could nominate or make a motion to approve any of the remaining applicants, keeping in mind that we only have one inside the city limit position left available.
Inside the city.
I'll start, I would make a motion to consider Wolfgang Schmidt in the 2nd District. He was previously, or has been an active member of the Planning Board, and by my understanding, very valuable contributor to the board, and so I don't think there's been any, he has good attendance and participation.
Can I just ask a question before we, I'll second that motion, but are we going to handle this by
I'm just, that's
Or
what I
just
thought you
use
said.
this as a ballot.
I mean, I just don't know how if we're going to nominate them all, or are we going to just, that's kind of the procedural question.
Or do you want to use this as a ballot?
I don't know, what's the best way to
What's the
do
best
it?
way to do it?
Well, I think if you use this as a ballot, the problem you run into is if you elect more than one person from inside the city limits, that person would be disqualified automatically, and therefore somebody would be, maybe want to change their vote. By the motion and second that you have is a way of, certainly a way of handling it, and you can do that process until you've filled the remaining 4. This is a decision of the board. You can certainly take whatever approach you prefer.
Those commissioners want to handle it?
I don't have a preference, you just said you would open up for somebody to, so I made my recommendation.
I kind of, now if we do it by ballot, we kind of, these ballots would have to be public record, correct?
Yes, this is a vote that is open and needs to be conducted today if you want to fill those positions.
I mean, one thing, if we did it by ballot, then everybody that's on the list has actually equal opportunity to get a vote, you know?
We could just start with the ones that have to have 2, because that's going to be pretty simple. Like District 4 and District 1. Our District 4 only has 2 applicants.
At this point, nobody has 2, everybody just has 1.
Right.
You can
Yeah, I
only
mean,
have 2.
applicants.
I see.
As far as applicants, there's only 2. If there needs to be 2 in each district, then there's only 2 applicants.
Well,
We
there
could
doesn't
start
need to
with
be
one
each
district
diff-
will only
this
have
one
one.
doesn't
Only gonna
come
have
down. Only one district will only have one.
Mm.
There's no requirement that a district has 2. There's
That's
just a
right.
requirement they can have no more than
Right.
2.
I see.
One district will in fact only have 1.
Well, I guess if we voted by ballot and then we ended up having a conflict, then we can on all that, yeah. It's up to you guys.
You have a motion and a second currently on the floor.
What's that?
There is a motion and a second currently on the floor.
But we can take
I
that,
withdraw
we
my
can take
motion.
that, I did, but I can take it down.
I can withdraw my motion and we can do.
Okay.
I
Withdraw my
motion.
second.
Okay. I didn't know you seconded. They said you
Yeah.
were going to
Yeah.
second it, but I never heard you second it after you asked your question.
So you want us to just write down on a,
Or circle the name or whatever.
well, I already circled stuff just by
I did
who was
too.
already done, and that's why I'm making sure that I'm not,
Put 4
So that's
stars.
okay.
1, 2, but we each only get four
Four.
votes.
Right.
So put 4 stars on your page.
yeah,
Or circle
4
or
votes.
something.
Well, we already
For
circled,
anyone.
so.
Make sure that you have notated or crossed off the people who are already appointed earlier.
Yeah, that's, I circled who was already on.
Accidentally
And that's
vote
what's
for
going
And then I was
somebody
gonna
who's
put 4
already.
stars by the 4
Who was
that
on
I
the
vote for.
5th? What's-
Alex Des Moines.
Okay.
And I would recommend you don't vote for 2 people inside the city limits since there's only one
Right.
vote.
Now, we don't have to, the people, the 5 we've appointed, we don't have to vote. That's
Those
already.
already, those were
Okay.
approved during the consent agenda.
It's hard. I don't know all these people.
Then just sign your ballot.
I really want to stay in bed this morning. If we wouldn't have had the board meeting, I would have came in late. You know what they say, the worst thing about being seasick is that you know you're not gonna die.
Who's going to count the ballots?
Somebody tally them up.
You want us to take care of that?
That's on it. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And yes, sir. Yep. And so is his. Yep, I can see it.
How about lunch? How about lunch, huh?
Mike, will you grab me? Please.
Yes. No, thank you. I'm trying to pace myself. Guess we won't get lunch. Or Chad brought lunch.
I guess we could order pizza.
You can make it work.
You can make it work.
We'll just cut a sandwich up into little bits.
Yeah.
Plenty of carbs in there.
Okay. That's allowable.
Linda, did you have any clients affected by the tornado? Not directly. You were able to get to them? Okay.
We could have taken a short break. So I guess we could have taken a short break. probably should have taken them first and then done the museums. Express our appreciation for how hard they've worked.
We have two tied. Okay. Do you want me to wait until the other commissioners
Yeah.
return? Okay. Do this. Becky, could you go print off another set of those? Could you go print off another set of these? Thank you. Am I right? Round
Mike coming back.
on those.
I just don't see any.
Council on Aging got Linda.
Oh, okay.
Planning and zoning for Public Works, and we got LCDs.
Right. I just don't see how we're going to get those done by
I don't
then.
either. That's what I said.
I don't mind disrespecting. No, I'm kidding. If somebody,
No, I-
I said, we have
All right.
a member of the community too with historic.
Well, Linda's short.
Just keep them up there. Just keep them. So I have reviewed the ballots, which will be available for anybody who would like to look at them. There were three top vote getters that were clear, and then there was this tie for the fourth place, so we will need a second round of ballots. But for the first round, Wolfgang Schmidt, John Matthews, and Terry Bartkowski all received top votes and would be the top three. If the board would like to consider making a motion to appoint those three people as the at-large, then we can do the second round of balloting for the remaining position, if that's okay with the board.
Who are the three again? Wolfgang?
It was Wolfgang Schmidt, John Matthews, and Terry Bartkowski. And all three of them are outside the city limits, so that would meet our requirements as far as inside, outside. And then the last remaining position, there was a tie for Jeff Spink and A.W. Hempel, tied for that position. So, but when you reopen the ballots, obviously, any remaining people would be subject to voting. So I can't guarantee that those would be the only two on that. Would the board like to go ahead and approve the three that had the top three votes in this round of balloting?
I'll make a motion to approve the top three vote candidates.
So that would
at
be
the at-large.
Wolfgang Schmidt, John Matthews, and Terry Bartkowski.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the appointments? Voting?
Aye.
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 Becky has another set of the forms.
Okay.
On this one, if you could just please mark just the one you're voting for, don't notate anything of any of the other ones. I mean, it was clear to figure out by the ballot what you intended, but just make sure you don't vote for anybody who's already been appointed.
Before we vote on this next one, I could offer some information about Jeff Spink that applied in my district. I've known him for about 20 years. He's a title company abstractor. He's got a lot of common sense. I've worked closely with him over the last 20 years. I would trust his judgment in a position like this. So just thought I'd throw that out there in case you guys don't know him.
And of course, Rocky Hempel's in the audience,
And Rocky, yeah, we all know Rocky.
our city councilman from Tonganoxie.
Former planning commission in Oski, I believe.
And I probably should have mentioned this, I'm assuming you all have figured that out. There's just one position left, so just vote for one, please.
Thank you, Mark. It's a win-win.
Yeah. Hang on.
Either way.
He figured out he just wanted to do right anymore.
That's what you call a win-win.
Commissioners, after the second round of balloting, A.W. Hempel has the majority of the votes. If that is the board's decision to appoint Mr. Hempel, need a motion to do so.
I move that we appoint A.W. Hempel to the Planning Commission for the vote.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the appointment?
Yeah, what does AW stand for?
What's that?
Yeah, what does AW stand for?
That was my initials. AW, it was my grandfather's initials. Actually, it's Arthur W.
You're not gonna tell us what-
I'll tell you, it's Arthur Warren.
Okay.
My grandfather and I have both had the same initials.
I never knew that.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
9 of us total.
9. When we moved to Tonganoxie, his mom rented us our first house.
Okay, voting?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. Planning board.
Just wanted to mention that their first meeting will be July Planning Commission meeting.
And I'm sure they'll be there at the 12.
Yeah, we
The
should
new
invite them
appointment.
just to sit in and listen,
Right.
please.
Yeah, we'll be sending them letters.
Okay.
Probably have to get traffic.
All right, we're ready for Council on Aging.
Part of the minutes, I would guess.
Sorry it's taking so long, Linda.
Good morning. I think we're still morning.
Yeah, it's still morning. Getting close.
First, we'll talk about transportation, but I want to say that in the past, we had used the county shop to do our repairs, and it wasn't a great experience. We've now started using the county shop again, and they couldn't be better. They have been very responsive to our needs. We really don't have any backup handicap vehicles, and so they have gotten them in and out. Like I said, I have nothing but high praise for the county shop and the work that they're doing. Our numbers are continuing to rise in transportation, and we're seeing more and more need for handicapped vehicles, and we do have one that we will be getting in October. It has been ordered, but we are averaging each day 104 trips, and that's a lot. Where we're seeing the rise, we see it within the city of Leavenworth-Lansing, but in the southern part of the county, that is increasing. This past month, we had 15 new riders. And there's what you call passenger miles and driver miles. And a driver mile, it would be coming from Leavenworth to go to, say, to Tongi or Linwood. There's nobody on board. We're using the gasoline, the cost of that driver to be there to get to that person. And I'm hoping in the future that we'll be able to have a driver and vehicle stationed in Tonganoxie so that the time would be passenger miles. They would leave from there, they would go to Linwood, to Base, or to Tongi, and then to Kansas City, so that we would alleviate this time that we're spending on the road right now. I believe the future is that we're going to see more and more need for seniors. We're seeing people that need dialysis down here. That's a 3-day-a-week trip for them. And it also can be a very expensive trip. And we have added to our transportation an attendant that will go. Our seniors, some of them get very concerned when they are having medical appointment, say at the med center someplace, they would like somebody to go with them. And sometimes it's just to stay in the waiting room, sometimes it's to go in the actual exam room and to take notes of what the doctor said. The other thing is our transportation is basically also a welfare check for our seniors. If you schedule a ride with us and we go and don't come to the door and we call you on the phone from the office, we still can't get you. We continue to try to make contact with you, or we have a contact person listed in our office on everybody that rides, and we will contact that contact person. Sometimes somebody's on the floor. Sometimes they've had a medical appointment they forgot to tell us about. But we just don't let it kind of hang, that we try to make sure that they are okay. We have a really good bunch of drivers. I'm very proud of the drivers that we have. And we always have had good drivers, but they go the extra mile and to make sure that everybody is transported in a very safe and kind manner. So, moving on to our information and assistance. As you can see, the numbers are dramatically going up. And in August, I have 2 more staff that are going to take the certification to be health insurance counselors. That would mean that we would have 4 within our office. The need for that is growing. Younger people are moving here, and it's not uncommon for us they'll have their parents in the basement of their house. They'll build a new house and they'll have a grandparents kind of quarters for them. And so we're seeing that, and the families may work in the city, and so grandma is home alone during the day, a lot of times on Meals on Wheels, but they're wanting information about the various kind of services that we have that are available for seniors in Leavenworth County. So that is the reason that you see that dramatic increase in numbers. Our outreach, we go to every town within Leavenworth County. My personal opinion is that everybody pays taxes, and it just shouldn't be available in Leavenworth Lansing. So one Thursday a month, we're in Easton, we're in Linwood, we're in Basel, and we're in Tongi. And so seniors can come there and visit with the INA specialist, and if she doesn't have the information, we make sure that we connect them with somebody that does. We also now have an attendant that will go to the Social Security office with the senior and just be there, here again, to take notes and to offer some assistance if they're struggling to understand it all. Our nutrition, we had some bad weather this winter, and we have shelf-stable meals for when we're closed, and not our office closed, but our delivery of meals closed. And we used all of our shelf stables. In fact, we went over, so we probably will project a little higher next year on that. But our numbers were dramatically increasing, and I'm sure part of that was the weather. However, we now have seen a huge number of our seniors are passing away, so our numbers are kind of coming down here. But the winter was really kind of a tough one. The number of meals, also our volunteers getting through the weather conditions the way they were. It resulted in us having to open 2 new routes for Meals on Wheels. And to do that, we have to get at least 5 volunteers for each route. So we had to come up with a minimum of 10 volunteers, which we were able to do. And really, I can't say enough about the people in Leavenworth that do volunteer like that. Because when it was bad, there were days that we weren't closed, and yet they got out, drove their own vehicles, and went in that weather to deliver the meals. So we have a great bunch of volunteers. As you can see, so far, in 2018, we served over 56,000 meals, and that we will probably exceed that this year. We do have a limit on how many, and part of that is based on finances. So it has a way of kind of evening itself out, because some people pass away, some will go to a nursing home or leave Leavenworth County. So I'm hoping we never have to get to where we have a waiting list for our seniors to get on Meals on Wheels. By the taxes, we did 298 taxes and 103 homesteads, so that was quite a lot. We also, for the first time, spent several days in outlying towns preparing taxes for those individuals also. And our PALS program, we right now have 19 dogs and 52 cats. We have some people that are supporting a person and their pets at the Meals on Wheels benefit that we had. We had what was called Adopt a Heart, and there were some individuals that we put our very lowest income individuals on that. And some people have their meals paid for a year, some half a year. And through the PALS program, if they have a pet, some of them have their pets paid for a year. So things are good at the Council on Aging.
They are.
Good to hear.
Do you have any questions?
How did your picnic come out at the Eagles Club a while back? I did not make it.
It was very well.
Or I couldn't make it.
Yes. And our summer benefit, our spring benefit, we made over 17,000, so we're very happy with that.
And the reason I'd ask you, if you'd had any of your clients in that tornado, I did run across a family that lost her home, and they were elderly, but their daughter was taking care of all their insurance stuff, which is a big thing. So I didn't know if you'd had a list of that.
We didn't, but I will tell you that we're very fortunate to be where we're at and to have the space, because families, if they go to a nursing home, they will leave us their things to redistribute. And, we have those things that we can do if somebody gets in dire straits. And I know this, next week last week we had a recliner donated to us. It's going to go this next week to a lady that is extremely low income and has to sit in a chair. She can't lay down to sleep anymore. So there's just, and we had a scooter, electric scooter donated. That's going to be going. We've been very fortunate that people donate to us that we can then give to those that truly are in need that can't afford to purchase them.
And you said you were getting some people trained in health insurance?
We have 2, and we're getting 2 more.
You're getting 2 more, okay, so that should take some of the load off the extension council?
That'll be.
The extension office?
Everybody did the health insurance counseling, the library did it, Catholic Charities did it, Extension. I think they had a lot of people. It's expensive to get your taxes done.
Right.
And, if you're really kind of struggling, if you have high medical bills, that's just another way that you can save money.
And then June 15th is Elderly Abuse Awareness Day. Do we have a proclamation for that to come up that week? Okay, we'll find one.
Okay. And then at the Eagles, we're having our transportation fundraiser, our flea market, and that's going to be on Saturday, August 3rd.
Okay, now, were you planning on attending our work session next week on transportation? Okay, all right. Anybody have any questions, Linda?
Linda, I was just going to say the report's incredibly helpful. One of the big questions I had was just, are we meeting the demand? And it sounds like we are, and you're not forecasting that we're not going to be. It seems to be leveling to some degree.
I will tell you, we struggle very much meeting what the demand is. And it has been, and I realize we can't be all things to all people. I've also been told that in the state, and actually people that have left the state and gone, well, we had one that went to Milwaukee, and we had one that went to Dallas, Texas. What we have available in Leavenworth County is not available there. The latest thing we tried to do, and we're doing on a very, very small level, is if you cannot leave your house to get your hair cut, that is a horrible thing. And we've had people that have been dire need of that. We happen to have a licensed beautician on our staff, and so she will go out and now, we don't do any perms, we don't do any styling, we don't do anything, but you can just get your hair cut, so it's just not. The same with, we had a gentleman in Tongi that hasn't been able to change his sheets forever. And he's in a wheelchair. And so the shoppers now, we will change your sheet. We don't wash it, we don't do anything, but once a month, when we go to shop for you, we will change your sheets for you. And it's on a very limited basis because we really don't have the staff to do these on large scale. But you know, if you do something good for one person, you've changed their life, so.
Yep.
I just want to mention that dealing with council on aging over the years, I don't know any other department. All of our departments do a great job, but I don't know any other department that does so much with so little that council on aging does. It's truly amazing how much they get done with what little they've got. So we really appreciate that, Linda.
Well, and I have to say that's because we have some really good county employees.
Any other questions, Linda? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Sorry it took so long.
That's okay.
All right, planning and zoning.
They're back.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Hope you all had a chance to read the report. I would like to highlight a couple of items. Planning and zoning, we have a process in place for expediting the building permit for all the folks who are impacted by the tornado. So all fees will be waived as part of that. Also, we are working with the cities to update their urban growth boundaries and also trying to see if they're interested in having some control within those areas. We have 2 cities that seems to be interested, but we are still waiting for the final agreement. I'm also having a meeting scheduled with all the cities to talk about it in the near future. County Road 1, staff is currently working on updating the zoning districts. We have 6 new zoning districts with the special development district that was approved by the county commission. So that's why it's taking a little bit of time to create those regulations for those new zoning districts. But we anticipate that we can get it done by the end of the summer. Because we have to take it through the planning commission and the board. We have to conduct public hearings and all that. So currently we are actually finalizing all the zoning districts.
Jeff, just a quick question. You know, when we have a change of this size, you know, we're typically not going to a zoning district that hasn't existed before. It may be new to a particular area, or maybe even newer to us as far as language, but it's not new necessarily. I'm assuming there's language we can leverage from other places in that regard, or are you really having to create it from the ground up?
No, we're getting it from several places. It's a unique situation. It's a special development district, so we have to put in some special guidelines within those areas. Those are all planned districts, so that way we can. It just goes through the process. We'll have a site plan process, you know. So there's several steps that needs to be done. So we just need to put that all in one section.
Okay.
So that's where we work.
I'm just thinking, a lot of times, I mean, light industrial is light industrial. I mean, you go down the list. I mean, those descriptions exist somewhere, so that's why I was curious.
Right, and then there'll be the table of uses, you know, what kind of uses that are allowed in those districts. Those are all the things that we need to finalize.
Okay.
And then we're also working on the comprehensive plan, as you all know. Our first meeting was May 23rd. We had more than 50 folks attend the meeting. Crystal will update you all on the future meetings and the process.
And the charrette.
I'll be there.
We did indeed have a charrette. We actually, as Jeff said, we had the charrette on, or sorry, the visioning meeting on May 23rd at the Baser Library. Sorry, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. It's exciting. On May 28th, the online community survey went live. That's being promoted via social media. It's being promoted on the lvcompplan.com. If you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at the website, we feel that the consulting team's doing a really great job of keeping things updated. Today, we're actually going through to put items on there from the visioning meeting that we just had, but even if you weren't able to attend that visioning meeting, by going through, we have everything on there that we did, all of the answers, so you could still, have a really great idea of what we did and what we'll be doing upcoming. The survey is going to remain open until September 1st. It is an online survey, however, we do have paper copies that we can give out if need be. The next step in this plan are the targeted focus groups. We've identified 5 topics that we feel are really important to Leavenworth County at this time and need to be addressed in this comprehensive plan. They're infrastructure, economic development, agriculture, land use, and urban growth. Each one of these focus groups will be held twice. Once in the north part of the county at Pleasant Ridge Elementary School and once in the south part of the county at the VFW, and they're staggered. We have a set of meetings that will take place June 19th and 20th, and then 26th and the 25th and 26th, and then again the 20th and the 25th. So they're kind of staggered throughout 2 weeks. We tried to give people significant opportunities to be able to come. They are at different times from noon, 4 p.m., and 7 p.m., and then, like I said, we've also broken it out north and south portions of the county. So that's kind of our next step. As we are moving forward with the focus groups, we'll also be identifying data from the community survey that we're receiving. And then we'll start compiling all of that information, which will get us to that charrette, which is scheduled for October 1st through 3rd. Those are really intense days. We start really early in the morning and we'll go late in the evening. We'll have lots of public engagement sessions throughout there also. And that is scheduled to be held at the Heritage Center here in Leavenworth.
Do you have any questions?
No question.
All right. Thank you.
I have one question. The new planning and zoning members that are coming on, are you going to have a training session?
Yes,
or
yeah,
that
we'll
kind of
have
thing?
several trainings and we have several work sessions. They'll be
Okay.
scheduled over the year, so yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Not for sure Jeff was going to ask about GIS, but.
Yeah. Public Works. Once again, I apologize for being so late on everything.
That's right. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I also apologize. I did release the superintendents to get some, we got a lot going on. So, but I would like the opportunity to at least present the superintendents to the board so that you can kind of get names and faces and understand maybe some of their roles and some of the things that they do for Leavenworth County. So, I mean, the folks that were here briefly, they're really the ones that get the work done on a day-to-day basis. They're the ones that are answering most of the questions, getting most of the decisions on the general operational thing, and they really are a critical part of the Public Works team.
And they do an amazing job.
Thank you. So we'll just move into our quarterly report real quick. And if there's any other information that you want to see as part of the quarterly report, let me know. This is my first quarterly report as the Public Works Director in the recently revised capacity. So if there's other stuff that you guys want to see, I'd be happy to add it. So I'll just kind of go through. I really just kind of bulletize it. As you were all aware, one of the primary functions that we're focusing on right now is the tornado cleanup from the Linwood tornado. We've been operating pretty much nonstop since that event happened. We initially deployed about 7 p.m. that night, worked till about 1 in the morning, and we've been operating every day since in different crew configurations. Currently, we're operating in conjunction with task force that have been provided via mutual aid from some of our adjacent surrounding municipalities, and they've been a tremendous benefit in the response and what we're doing now. We executed phase 1 last week, which was kind of initial vegetation removal to allow first responders and power and utility companies to get in there and get the lights back on and all this stuff functioning. And then phase 2 this week has been focused on debris removal to include all of the different classifications of debris, and we've been executing that. We will have a kind of a status update meeting tomorrow, and we will determine, revise our schedule and see what kind of additional response is going to be required. So that has really been the primary focus of most everyone in the Public Works Department, to include all the different phases. Solid Waste has had maintained extra operating hours, and we've been supporting those efforts as best we can. So just kind of go in order, you see it by the different functions. The county shop, our largest function, Vince Greer is our road and bridge superintendent. Vince manages 59 folks, and that is really the lion's share of the work that is done. Primarily, it's for the operation and maintenance of the roadway network, but it does support other things. It has the lion's share of our equipment, and we've been focusing very heavily on Linwood cleanup, although this time of year is typically our asphalt maintenance season, and this is the time of year we would be doing patching, then followed on by chip seal. We are now into June. Usually we've already started the chip seal process at this time. That process would consist of approximately 60 to 90 miles of roadway a year, depending on some pavement management strategies that we've incorporated. We're in the process of revising that system as well, but typically every 3 to 4 years you need to chip seal your existing asphalt roadways in order to maintain them and keep them operating at their peak efficiency, so we don't start seeing pavement failures. We do have some contract work that's going to be occurring as well, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Fleet maintenance, we appreciate the kind words from the Council on Aging. That is a function that we've Chris Collins is our fleet maintenance superintendent. He handles predominantly the lighter vehicles as well as the heavy vehicles operated by the shop. That includes the Sheriff's Office and the Council on Aging. We find it to be most cost effective to keep that stuff in-house, although I think one of the challenges that Chris was going to present today was qualified technicians, and you've all heard this about the current state of the economy, and finding good mechanics for everyone is a challenge in the public and the private sector. So, we're definitely competing with the public sector. With the private sector very, very much because we do a lot of the same kind of overlap. So there is something that is going to require further study, but finding good mechanics is a challenge for our fleet maintenance department. Noxious weed. I should also put maybe in here, this is Alan Phillips. He works for Vince, but it's a statutory function that we perform in Public Works. And I should also put in there vegetation control. So in the response to the Linwood tornado, noxious weed has really mobilized a lot. We've really been supporting our task force. There's a lot of chainsaw work that has had to have been done in the last few days, and that's really a lot of the function of the noxious weed. They handle some of the local service road maintenance with mowing, as well as we've got vegetation control has been something we do on a regular basis, and in this case it's in a very intense operation. Buildings and grounds, that is managed by Aaron Yoakum. Aaron came to us from the school district, and he has been a fantastic upgrade. He is bringing a lot of great experience, both public and private, to the organization, and Aaron is always executing projects. He's got a lot going on now, and he's got a lot coming up. Just to kind of talk a little bit, we've got some surfacing at the Justice Center that we're scheduled to do this summer. We've got some concrete work around the courthouse that you'll start seeing, some stair repairs and such. There is a carpet replacement at the Justice Center that will be happening this year, as well as the sprinkler system has been commissioned for the first time in a couple years, and it is operating. Fortunately, Mother Nature has provided us 13 plus inches in May, so we haven't really used it yet, but it is ready to go. So we will definitely maintain the grounds of the courthouse in a manner that is appropriate. Transfer station is managed by Ms. Tammy Saldivar, she's been doing this for a lot of years. She's a longtime Leavenworth County employee, and she does a good job out there. The transfer station, a couple things that we need to be aware of. One, they've also been helping with the tornado debris, although most of that is happening off-site. We did open the transfer station for extended hours, and it was utilized some, but not as extensively since we have such a robust effort down in the Linwood area. And we do have the Leavenworth cleanup that is ongoing now. Just to kind of, I think Tammy did send in 2008, we processed 14,390 tons through the Leavenworth cleanup. In 2019, we're currently at 11,105 tons. That's a year-long program, so it's still moving along good. We've had 266 customers so far this year, and that's since April 1st. So that's a lot of stuff going on, and then so that's still moving forward. I think I'll break it. Any questions on any of that stuff today to that part?
Well, Mr. Spiegelmeyer, you had mentioned earlier that there's going to be a meeting to try to figure out some schedules on the cleanup. Is that tomorrow, you said?
Yeah, I'm going to meet with the task force tomorrow, and we're going to try to do an assessment of the percentage that we're complete. Of the task force help we've had so far, Lenexa was very gracious enough to help us last week. DeSoto helped us through yesterday, and then Leavenworth is helping us through today. So we're starting to, as with any municipality that is offering their time, that is greatly appreciated. But they, everybody has work of their own that they need to be working on, and this is our prime maintenance season. So they're going to demobilize. So we're just going to kind of figure out how much work is left, what we're projecting, and if we need to ask for some follow-on assistance from other municipalities that might be available to assist with some of the cleanup. So tomorrow is really an assessment to see where we're at and what's left to do as far as debris management.
And some of this will probably be discussed in our work session this afternoon with emergency management, but I'm concerned with the amount and what you got to do, and then your small window of opportunity to take care of your roads that we have to get done before winter. We can't let our roads go into a winter with like the winter we had last year without any maintenance. So, we're going to have to look at some some contractors, and how they will be paid or how we would pay them till FEMA reimbursed us. But like I said, that stuff we'll probably talk about in the work session.
Yeah, and we're prepared to have those discussions this afternoon. So.
Okay, and like I said, I just want you to know that I'm speaking for the board, but we have concerns about the amount of debris that's got to be cleaned up, and what we're asking your department to do.
This has definitely been one of the most substantial debris cleanups that we've ever had to execute. Anyone that's worked there for 30-plus years will attest to the fact that the intensity and the length of the impacts of that EF4 tornado are such that it has generated a lot more destruction than we are accustomed to. So, but we do appreciate, we've had tremendous support from our partners in the region. So.
Commissioner Smith, don't you think that, this is just since we're going to bring Mr. Spiegelmeyer and others back this afternoon, that we could break that and have the rest of this information in the afternoon?
That's fine with me.
LCDC
Yeah,
come.
the LCDC.
And speak with us, and then adjourn, take back up afternoon, and have the rest of this report done then? Is that?
I don't have a problem, Commissioner, have a problem with that, because like I said, Mr. Spiegelmeyer will be here at the work session.
I will. I guess of all the other items, we need to discuss E58 consultant selection. This is the bridge over Stranger on Millwood Road. I'll need to schedule a selection committee. We've got all the stuff from this. We can discuss that.
You need a motion to do that?
I don't believe so. I just think we need a part of our policy. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure you realize I'm not trying to delay that project.
All right. Any questions, Mr. Spiegelmeyer?
He just answered it.
All right, well, like I said,
Yeah, we can take that up
Thank you
with you
for
this
everything you're
afternoon.
doing down there in Linwood.
Thank the
Public
crew.
Works staff is really, they
Amazing.
spend a lot of hours down there, and they are on 4 10-hour days, so there'll
Oh,
be
well, we
5
have it.
10-hour days this week, maybe 6.
It's even been more than 10. It's,
Okay, well,
those guys, you know, we still had crews out Saturday and Sunday for responses.
Okay. So maybe in our work session, we can talk about their holiday
right. That's why I
pay.
said we can deal with some of that then.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mike.
Mike.
All right, thank you, Mike.
See you in an hour or two.
I will be here.
That's an hour.
LCDC, come on
Okay.
down.
All right.
Are we on at 1? Or
Yes,
1:30?
sir.
Yeah.
I bet next time you come later.
Need a Red Cross truck showing up.
Next time you won't show up at 9.
All right.
For what it's worth, we generally don't have 7, 8 museums in a day, so.
Yes, I knew we wouldn't be on at 9:15, but
Thank you for
it's
your
been a long
patience.
time since we've had a quarterly update to the Board of County Commissions, so we kind of wanted to be here, so if things happen quickly, then so I will try to get through a lengthy PowerPoint as quickly as possible. I'm Steve Jack, Executive Director of LCDC, and Harlan Russell is the president this year, serving a 2-year term. And you should have this PowerPoint. Oh, yes, there's just a slight delay. Okay. I will go through some economic development data as quickly as I can, but I thought it was kind of interesting to kind of set the stage. The state of Kansas unemployment rate in April of this year, 3.5%. Leavenworth County is 3.2%. Our unemployment rate has lowered. Labor force has increased, therefore the number of employed has increased to 35,189. We can disaggregate, well, the city of Leavenworth is one of the 15 largest communities in the state of Kansas, and so we can, through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, know how many are employed within the city. We can't know that from the data for Lansing or Tonganoxie or Basel or Easton or Linwood, but we can measure the county and disaggregate the Leavenworth data, and so that's what I've done for Balance of County. So the Balance of County unemployment rate is almost in the 2s, 3.0% at 21,741. The next slide shows the KC metro area. This came from Mid-America Regional Council. Actually, it's Bureau of Labor Statistics again, but this was from a document that was put together by Mark. That yellow line shows the U.S. Year-over-year employment growth at about 1.75, 1.7% annually. And this line, the blue line that appears to be going down, doesn't mean that employment is going down, just the rate of growth is going down. And the Kansas City metro area in 2019, looking back at the last year, is at 0.6%, or 0.6% or under, just a little bit over 0.5%. Leavenworth County's data, if you go back to the previous slide, is at 1%. So we're doing better, performing better in terms of employment growth in Leavenworth County, but not as fast as the rest of the United States.
Steve, on that
Yes.
previous slide, I thought it was pretty neat that, or not neat, it was informative that although the city of Leavenworth is flat, actually down, that the county's up over 300 jobs. So, meaning all the job growth is happening outside of the city of Leavenworth, is my point. And they're the
Yes,
balance.
exactly. They were down 10, yeah, and that was interesting, even though the unemployment rate is down, because the people in the active labor force are down, either employed or are looking for employment. So, yeah, absolutely. The next slide is a slide of the map, and it's a little bit difficult to see here, not too difficult, but Leavenworth's 3.2% is indicated here. What's interesting is Atchison and Wyandotte County are quite a bit higher than us, 4.4% in Atchison and 4.1% in Wyandotte. Now, Johnson County and Douglas County are 2.7, Jefferson's even below 3 at 2.9.
but we're kind of in the middle of Wyandotte County and Johnson County in terms of unemployment rates. And then if you look out western Kansas, Garden City, Finney County is at 2.4. They're running out of people. In Ford County, Dodge City, 2.5. A lot of those communities out there are struggling to find workers. And it's not as significant a problem for us because we have at least a little bit above 3%, and we have some adjacent counties with a higher unemployment rate that we can draw upon. The percentage population change going back from 2010 to 2013 shows that Leavenworth was at 5.22%, and that put us in as one of 12 of the blue growing counties. So there are 105 counties in the state of Kansas, only 12 grew in the last 7 years. And we were the 4th fastest growing county out of 105. There were 16 counties flat out of 105, and 77, all those in red and pink, were declining population, meaning not just, declining more than 1%. So in some cases, 4 and 5 and 6%. The projected population change looking forward from 2014 to 2044, so the next 17 years or 27 years, but this is a 30-year projection going back 3 years. Leavenworth County is projected to increase in population. Now we've switched again. These last two charts are now talking about population, not employment. But that's sort of an indicator. Leavenworth County is projected to grow at 34.3%, which would be the 5th fastest growing county in the state. And so there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 greater than 30% growth. What's interesting, there's several things interesting about our neighbors. Johnson County is faster at 57.5. Which would put them second fastest growing county in the next 30 years to Pottawatomie County. Douglas County and Geary County, 42 and 42.7%. But Wyandotte County is projected to only grow 4.9% in the next 30 years. And Jefferson County is projected to decrease by almost 13%, and Atchison is projected to decrease by 30% its population over the next 30 years.
What are they, when they dig down into those numbers, how are they projecting? They're projecting out quite a ways here, but have you done any research as to what the algorithm or whatever they're plugging into that?
Not specifically, Commissioner. I would know that some of the projections forward are formed from what has happened in the past and trends in the past. So these numbers aren't a lot different than the previous slide's numbers, but with regard to specifics, don't know.
Quite an increase for the metro area.
Yeah, and there are, Johnson County continues to grow. There's land available in Johnson County. There is not as much land for new neighborhoods, for example, in Wyandotte County. It's a smaller county with a larger population, and so we have more ability to accept more population, so. Anyway, I don't know whether you found that interesting. I do. Used to be quarterly updates. Now it's two times a year updates with the city of Leavenworth, and so we usually talk about the demographic stuff at the beginning. And so I just thought I'd kind of throw that in to kind of set the stage for our efforts. So let me get right into business recruitment, marketing, and assistance, and then we'll talk a little bit about the business retention expansion. In 2016, we had 65 leads, in 1786, 2018 about 70. So we're getting 60, 70, 80 leads from these sources, the Kansas Department of Commerce, Kansas City Area Development Council, some that come directly to LCDC, and then some that are referred by a city, a chamber, or Main Street. And you can see these are 2019 or 18 lead sources where they came from. For example, Department of Commerce, we got 19 leads last year from them, 21 from KCADC. And then this year we're at 6, 6, and 6. So the most important areas are usually about a third our own outreach, about a third KCADC, and about a third from the State Department of Commerce. And so far this year, we're at 24 leads. Out of the 24, we have been able to submit a building or land for 11 of them. And so if you look at the ratio between leads and prospects, it's about 50%, 40, 50, 60% of the projects. And we're going to talk about those in just a sec, the ones that we're unable to, that we don't have a product for. And then when we talk about locations, we had what looks like really strong years in 2016 and 17 with 17 locations. These locations could include projects where we actively recruited a company, Unilock in Tonganoxie, Central Bag in Leavenworth, or we provided assistance to a new company with either finding them a building or a loan or a grant. LPF Coatings in Lansing, Genco at the First City Center in Leavenworth, and some pretty small companies. So when we say 7, it's not 7 new cereal ingredients that no one's heard of yet. It may be the barber shop. So some of these are pretty small. Now, the business recruitment challenges, and this is something that Commissioner Shimke had asked a month or 6 weeks ago about. The past 5 years, what I've done is, and I'll show you a document you haven't seen yet, and if you want more, if you want to see this document, I can sure send it to Mark, but this is sort of the backing documents to this 158 leads that we were unable to submit for the past 5+ years. I took the spreadsheets of all the 60 or 70 projects or 80 projects that we had going back 5 years, and then cut out the ones that we submitted, so just the ones that were remaining. That's my version of a database, so it was a little labor intensive, and then color coded them and came up with these data. 158 leads unable to submit. 95 of those were due to a lack of building. And 54 of the 95 were a building above 50,000 square feet. 24 were smaller than 50,000 square feet in size, and 17 were office buildings. 43 lacked rail. 10 lack of larger parcels, so even though we have 2 new and big industrial parks, they may not be big enough for a request for 150, 200 acres, and we had 7 of those, or 10 of those. 7 were heavy industrial, maybe a chemical plant that a community didn't want to pitch to, and then 3 lacked a runway. So rail, much higher than next to an airport, but if we had an airport, then those would be the kind of projects that we could submit for. And I will tell you this, just in the last day, I received just to kind of inform those and update those numbers, Barb Hake from the Kansas Department of Commerce sent me an email, received a call from a Kansas City real estate broker looking for 25 to 50 acres of land for a distribution operation. The site has to be rail served. Then I received an email from a woman who is the new research coordinator for Newmark Grubb Zimmer out of Atlanta, not even, they have a presence obviously with Zimmer in Kansas City, looking for buildings to put in their database, so when they're working with clients who want to move to the Kansas City area, they have this database. And she's looking for any industrial buildings that we might have, a minimum of 50,000 square feet available space with a minimum of 18-foot ceiling height. So without the kind of product, and not every community has all those, but we certainly are at a deficit and have been for a while. Business park activities, Unilock is located in the Tonganoxie Business Park. You can see that, let's see, did I skip? No. Okay, I just put them out of order. You've got the right order, I didn't. Unilock, Phase 1 is about 16 acres, that graded area with gravel, and that's a yard for the landscape pavers that they manufacture in Aurora, Illinois. It's a 7,000 square foot checkout building and storage, and it's a beautiful building. They've done some great landscaping work. You can see the yard from 2440, but when you drive up that east, that interior road, you can't really even see the product on the yard. And I think that some people that see what we've located, because LCDC did work with a commercial real estate firm in the Kansas City area to bring Unilock to Tonganoxie a few years ago in Larry Meadows' temporary a site, and now they've moved on to the business park and purchased that. They see a small building with a few people, a handful of people, and that's it. But the development agreement that Unilock signed with the city of Leavenworth calls for a 40,000, Tonganoxie, thank you, 40,000 square foot office and warehouse and a manufacturing facility. When they do that, they will add another dozen jobs, and then if that goes well, which they anticipate, they'll add 8 for a second shift and 8 more for a third shift, and there's enough room to build a second manufacturing facility on the property. And when Nathan McCommon was the city manager of Tonganoxie, and we brought Unilock out to look, we looked at what they had in Aurora, Illinois, and they've got 70, 80, 90, maybe close to 100 employees. And we looked at it, and it looked nice and clean, and they had different separate buildings, and they have people come purchase, landscape architects order from that facility, and yet they also did manufacturing. And we said, well, we want that. And they said that took 28 years. So they're the kind of company that will grow slowly, but there's enough potential there that we thought giving up 34 acres was important, particularly since it was the first one. And the capital investment will be close to 19, maybe even more, $1 million for that. In the Leavenworth Business Park.
Question on that last one.
Pardon, yes?
What's the time frame as far as expansion at the present time?
Years 3 and 4. The development agreement, I think, is a 5-year agreement. But the employment is supposed to happen in the third and fourth year.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And looking back at that just to the right of the lighter area where they're currently in, where the yard currently in is, if they don't pull the trigger on the 40,000 square foot building and the full 18 million of investment instead of the 1 or 2 that they've made so far, and the jobs, then that reverts back to the city. So they bought 34 acres, but they bought it in 2 phases, depending upon their performance, both capital investment and jobs.
And in visiting with them, you think it's looking good for moving ahead?
Yes. Yeah, I think they're very happy. Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for the question. So we have submitted the Leavenworth Business and Technology Park for 7 national projects to date, and we just cut the ribbon on it about a year ago, just under a year. In a couple of weeks, it'll be right at 12 months. The park made the first cut, the paper cut, after I've sent in a RFI or an RFP, respond to do a proposal, and sometimes those are 30, 40, 70, 80, 90 pages long. We've done that 3 times, and we made the cut for 3 projects, and we got visits from site consultants who brought along the company. So we got companies from other states on the ground, and some of those were also visited the Tonganoxie Park. We were a finalist for a major national project. There were 3 states, 4 finalists, and because, and this is what the site consultant told us, because of state incentives, that one state just went way beyond what the state of Kansas was equipped to handle, the project located in a different state, and that's about 500 jobs. The state of Kansas knows that, and I was with the Secretary Tolan last night at the Team Kansas Awards Banquet, and they are, I think Friday, opening up bids for another Redwood Crider report. Those of you old enough to, as I am, to remember Redwood Crider in the 80s, KU professors who did a massive study about the economic development incentives and the development programs of Kansas, came up with about 134 bullet points, and they did just about every one, the creation of K-Tech and a lot of things that have come and gone, but an investment in the state's future made in 86, 87, 88, and beyond. They're doing Redwood Crider 2.0, and so I think there are 9 different companies that are going to be involved in that, because what we were told was that the city's incentive, cost of land and property tax abatement were, as KCADC told us, here compared to some of the other cities, and it was state-related. But we were excited to be a finalist, and we're excited that the site consultant, who's one of the leading site consultants in the country, had been here. And he wasn't here just once. I think we had 3 visits with that company. We're still being considered, both parks, for a USDA project that you've read about in the paper, and there's one additional project, and that's Project Petal, which I'll talk about in just a moment. I would say this, that the city of Leavenworth hired Newmark Grubb Zimmer out of Kansas City to do a study for their commission about what we ought to, what the city ought to charge, what the city's expectations ought to be, how a benchmark our 80-acre park in Leavenworth with others, and some of this can inform the Tonganoxie Park as well. And on the last page, there's a schedule for land sales, and really talks about expectations. And I think that, I was going to say I could provide you copies, but I think this research report and recommendations, Leavenworth Business and Technology Report, is available online on the city's website. But what they told the city was that you should expect KCADC and state projects, one response, local response to State and Area Development Council every 6 months. So it's not 5 or 10, it's a couple a year. And then prospect visits, one site visit every year. And we've had 3 finalists to become a finalist for a relocation project every 18 months. And we've had 1 in each in 1 location, the Unilock, although the Unilock was one we had in our hip pocket from 2016-17. And then completed deals, they would hope we would expect complete new projects every 24 months. And so we've had Unilock, but obviously the clock is ticking. And so I think that informs the satisfaction. I think the city, if you talk to the city manager and the city commissioners, they're pleased with the rate of outreach and then response back of those 7 companies that we have submitted. And on the next slide, you can see Project Levitt is the USDA headquarter facilities. They're now focused, as you know, there are 138 expressions of interest all over the country, and they narrowed that down to 60-some, and they narrowed the 60 down to 3. They are Research Triangle in North Carolina, Indiana around Purdue, and the greater Kansas City area. So that's the good news. The not so good news is that they really are going to first look for an existing building. So if you've got an existing shiny office building, that may be the first place they look. But we do have parks that we could build to suit, and so we've submitted, and partly because of the county and particularly the northern part of the counties, but really the whole county's reliance on government jobs. I mean, there are a lot of, obviously, the Fort is an economic driver, the VA and all its ancillaries, CMOP and CPAC, that we would be a good fit for another government facility. And that message we took to Jill McCarthy at KCADC, and she read it loud and clear. So she's excited about that, but we should hear something soon. Project Petal that I had mentioned, they're looking for a 50, 60-acre greenfield site. It's a lot of jobs. There was a smaller project with 3 or 4 jobs. They needed 24,000 square feet. They also needed 400 parking spaces. It's a disaster recovery center and would be the 3 or 4 full-time people there. And then if there's a disaster, then they move into the parking spaces, and they've got square footage. And so that was something that came to us from an out-of-state site location consultant. We've been working with one on the West Coast, Project Galaxy, for about a year. It's a cold storage unit. They need 10 acres, and that's about 40 employees. Project Steel 2.0 is an ironworkers training facility. They're interested in 4 lots in Urban Hess. We've been working with the company for the last 18 months or so, and they're back at the table. They've talked to the city council and planning and zoning in Tonganoxie, and now they're raising money for this training facility. Port Authority is very excited. Port Authority owns the 4 lots in Urban Hess that they're interested in. Project PT came from a real estate company out of Dallas, even though it's a small, so every once in a while we get a call from Dallas needing 2,000 square feet for a physical therapy office, and they're looking at Eisenhower to K7 to Metropolitan. And then Project Outer Space and Project Big Swing are call centers that have expressed interest in the area, and we've submitted the first city center. Business retention and expansion. We've done 90 existing business visits in 2018. Lisa Hack does those, and she did 90 last year. We try to do anywhere from about 70 to 100. We would remind everybody that most new job growth comes from existing companies. A company like Cereal Ingredients that's expanding may create 20 or 30 jobs in a year, and no one ever hears about it. But if we were to bring a new company with 30, jobs, everyone would know about it. Our intention is to ensure retention and remove barriers to expansion. And so what we did in 2013, slipping into 2014, we started to quantify that. How do you quantify what effort we make with existing companies? And so we counted grants, loans, tax savings, anything that we were responsible for in writing, in bringing the horse to water and then making them drink. And I can tell you, talking to many of these companies, and Lisa would confirm that most of them would not have taken advantage of the loans and grants and tax savings out there. The PEAK program, the state's high performance incentive program, the Kansas industrial training and retraining programs, but not for us. So most EDCs like us will put them in touch with or give them a business card, and what we've done is help write the grant. And when we do that, then we can count the numbers. And we had savings of about $7 million in a worksheet that I provided that runs from 2013 to 2018. And Lisa and I just looked at the savings for this year, which would be added to the $7 million, and it's just at $1.29 million, about $1.3 million. So in that period, from 2013 to date, we are at about $8.3 million in real savings of money that can be reinvested in local companies, Hetron, Midstar Lab, all over the county, and so we're very proud of that. An example would be Holyfield Vineyard and Winery, an $81,000 grant that we wrote in 2016, and wrote a follow-up grant for nearly $150,000 in 2018-19 from the Department of Ag. U.S. Department of Agriculture for increased production and third-party grapes to help Michelle and the crew down there expand.
Question for you.
Yes, yes.
On this intention to ensure retention and remove barriers to expansion, what would be some examples of barriers to expansion that you have found?
Sometimes, I mean, it could be simple, like a pothole in front of their driveway that trucks can't get in, and so we might be a liaison with the city to talk about it. It could be a lack of resources, that if they only had $20,000 or even $100,000 tax credit, that they could do more. And so and really, we do those business visits in a formal manner. We sit down, ask them questions, put it in a database so that we're not surprised that to hear that they've laid off jobs or they may be thinking about moving. We tried to remove the barriers to the VAC MOP facility, and we'd worked with them for about 4 years until they did a switcheroo on us and said, we're not interested in a build-to-suit 100,000 square foot building, we're interested in an existing building, and it has to be within this geographic area, and oh, by the way, there's one. And we didn't have it. And so the existing building was the determining factor on their decision to move out to Johnson County. But I would say regarding that project, they've just signed an extension to the end of 2021 for the facility here. So it's going to take them a little time to ramp up. So.
I was just going to add too, on some of the smaller businesses, the hurdles can be financing. That's one of the drivers, and Steve's going to talk about it here in a few minutes, that we developed a spec building program, was to help address that specific hurdle.
Yeah, and this slide, we're continuing to work with those state incentives that we talked about. Trade adjustment assistance is the one that I hadn't mentioned in my list just a second ago. Labor assistance through the Workforce Partnership at the Workforce Center on Limit Street that serves the whole county, workforce recruitment and placement. Sometimes, talk about a barrier, Commissioner Stephen, oftentimes the barrier is workforce. That I could expand if I could find 5 people, or I could expand if I could find 20. And usually the Workforce Partnership Group, which is a 3-county region, there are 5 regions in the state, is who we turn to for that. And then also, Lisa's done fantastic work connecting with the Fort and Brett Rosine and his crew at Fort Leavenworth. Grow Leavenworth County used to be a city-only, funded out of Network Kansas and investors that offered $45,000 low-interest loans. The city of Lansing came to us a few years ago when Stephanie Leaf was hired and said, I want one of those. And so we went to Network Kansas, and first we went to the local folks and said, would you share? And could we expand it to a countywide effort? And they were excited, and so we did. And Taylor Tedder at the city, and then Lansing took over the rest of the county, and that $45,000 cap grew to $75,000. We were so successful that we ran out of money, and so they've reduced it down back to $45,000. And what used to be a no-interest loan is now a 1% to 3% loan. It does require a 40% match from a bank or a public source. But Grow Leavenworth County is something that we've worked with many businesses, and Lisa serves on the Grow Leavenworth County Board. There's a new LCDC microgrant program. We received about $10,000 or $12,000 a few years ago from a collective of, it was a statewide program administered in regions, and they just gave up. I mean, they just said, this is not working the way it ought to, but we still have this money. Let's split the money and distribute it. And so what we're doing is just grants, but they're small grants, and they're for entrepreneurs, and they're as little as $200 and as much as $1,500 for smaller companies. And then the new spec building program, which, as I mentioned a few weeks ago to this commission, up to a $200,000 building loan a second mortgage to a bank loan, and the first project, 400 North Main Street in Lansing. And I've got more information that I've provided the county administrator in our budget request about that spec building program. And then branding. As many of you know, we have dipped into, the board dipped into the reserves of $142,000 last year in this to do a strategic marketing plan. We have new logos, a new website, adaptive website that'll work on smartphones and iPads. We have new brochures. We have property flyers that are really nice. And we have ads in Metro Wire and several other online publication. We did a site selection magazine, which is the premier, something that in the past we didn't think we could afford, but we thought instead of nickel and diming it with some of the smaller publications that we would focus on site selection, and that's got a circulation of nearly 50,000. We're doing a video mailer. As soon as we can finish the drone videos and the 3D virtual buildings that Bartlett and West out of Lawrence are helping us with, and then we are discussing business mailing lists to targeted industries, and we talked a little bit about what kind of industries, and we're narrowing that, but just to give you just some quick bullets before we wrap it up: advanced manufacturing, light manufacturing, assembly, some food, warehousing, distribution, animal health, bioscience, a lot of the same things, about everything that you can have that doesn't smell too bad and doesn't need rail, we'd like to have, and we want to keep a broad mind about it.
Hey, Steve, real quick, just a
yes.
thought, and I don't know how that list is ultimately being created, but I always subscribe to this kind of 80-20 rule. We know that there's the majority of commercial real estate that's developed in and around Kansas City is done through just a select number of firms and a select number of brokers. I mean, it's not all brokers are created equal. So can I suggest that we maybe look at those larger brokerages, specifically those more successful brokers, the reps themselves, and get that mailer when you have the videos and collateral that you want in their hands too?
That's exactly right. And actually, we can't afford more than about 100 of them, so they're going to have to go to a mix of national and Kansas City, and I would say maybe 50-50, and send it to the 50 most important people that we've met over the time or we know of that are doing deals, to let them know, because it does have an impact. I've received one. CoStar Location 1 had something like this, and it had 2 videos about the 2 organizations when they merged. It is pretty impressive when you get something, a video mailer that has video and music and talking and stuff. So yeah, good point. The people that are responsible for a lot of our marketing, at least the structure, and then we have to deliver it, is Candid Marketing out of Kansas City. They just recently won 2 Fountain Awards for LCDC work. The single ad that they ran in Site Selection Magazine, and then the whole brand campaign that we've been talking about was a finalist for the People's Choice Award, and the Fountain Awards were awarded by this ANA, Business Marketing and American Marketing Association of Kansas City in March. So we think they're doing really quality work, and they work with other EDCs. I didn't want somebody who would necessarily set us apart that was a little unique and different. I wanted somebody that would upgrade the professionalism so that when you see Overland Park or Kansas City, Missouri, or even Wyandotte County that does really good work, that we looked and spoke at the same level as those. And then finally, and I am so sorry that it's this late, but I was trying to move it so quickly. Anyway, and we'd be happy to stick around for questions too. But we have a KCADC Real Estate Council event, and many of those folks that we were talking about, the Kansas City real estate folks, will be at that Royals game. We attend every year and have opportunities to network, and we do go to those networking events. That SIOR, the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors event, put on by the realtors who have booths there. We'll go talk to them then. We'll do KCADC events. Then going back to the second bullet point and the antepenultimate one, the next to last one, the Board of County Commission quarterly updates. We'll be back here maybe with a more focused and shorter presentation September 4 and November 6. So we plan to keep communicating and those lines of communication open. We have asked, and Commissioner Stephen and I had talked about getting Secretary Tolan, David Tolan, who's newly confirmed Secretary of Commerce, to Leavenworth County, and the commissioner said, let's get him for the whole day. And I said, there's no way we'll get him for the whole day. And we got him for the whole day. So thank you very much. And I did talk to him yesterday, and he's got some tweaks of the schedule, but what we'd like to do is invite the Board of County Commission to an LCDC meeting at Lansing Community Center so you all can have discussions and hear what he has to say. And then we're going to try to touch each of the areas of the state and take him up to the fort and show him the Staff College there on September 12th. And that still is a deal. I believe he'll be back. I think he's going to Japan with the governor a couple days before that, and so they should be.
That's September, not August.
Yes, September, yeah. We were trying to get him August, and that fell through, and then I think they added Japan to the outreach of the International Marketing Division in early September. I think they'll be back for that, at least that's what I was told last night. Our golf tournament, we raised about $7,500 that we pour back into, actually two things. We take a couple thousand of it and spend it on an LCDC VIP event on November 15. The rest of it goes into marketing, what we make in the golf tournament. We'll have a Team Kansas lunch. We were at the Team Kansas Awards banquet last night. That's a lunch put on by the Kansas Department of Commerce Chicago rep. And so we'll talk to site consultants and commercial realtors out of Chicago at that lunch on October 17. And then there is a dinner that we've signed up for in Boston on November 7th. And then the last thing snuck in the middle of that, OU, University of Oklahoma, EDI, it's Economic Development Institute, and it's a 3-year course. They're week-long educational events. Lisa will be going to that. Lisa has been, last year we sent her to the basic economic development course, and then there's 3 more years. And once you're done with that, then you can be certified economic developer, you get a certificate, and it is, we think, a profession, and so there are people like University of Oklahoma that put on these training events. And so with that, I'll take a break and ask for any questions or ask Harland or Lisa.
Well, I think he had 23 pages. I had one card of it, just a couple of notes that I wanted to share while I was here. So as the president, when I took office, sat down with Steve and started talking about some things that we could look at as priorities. And coming from the development side of development side myself, I've spent about 35 years of commercial residential development in my full-time career. I didn't know that this was going to become practically a full-time career, but we are here. And one of the things we talked about was how do we keep our director out in the field? How do we keep our director on the phone, engaged with site consultants? Because that's really where the rubber meets the road. And one of the things that I did was I asked Steve early on, I said, will you generate me a list of every meeting you go to in a year? It was staggering. It's over or close to 150 meetings that are generally, I would say, within the county. Not related, I mean, they're reporting type meetings, coming in front of folks like you. And I said, well, let's look at some ways we can consolidate some of that. Let's consolidate our reporting so it looks uniform and we give the same report out to the same places. And I think we're doing a good job of getting everybody on board with that, of saying, yeah, this is a good format. We're communicating what we need to do to communicate to you. And so we're going to look at that a little bit, I think, over the next couple of months as well, and look at how maybe the board meetings are structured, if we could have a few less board meetings, and then focus on the things that we really need to come back and report to leaders like you so that you're comfortable in what we're doing. And so along with that, I feel like there's 3 hot buttons that we have, and Steve may disagree because there's probably hundreds of things that we do, as you can tell from what Steve's reported, but I think the hot button things are, we have to have an ability to respond to requests for information, and we have to have that ability to respond immediately. If you guys haven't worked in the development business, you probably don't know that when a request for information comes across Steve's desk, he's typically given maybe at most a week to respond, but generally days. And the breadth of some of those requests for information can be amazing, down to how much is the electric rate in that specific business park, or what is your capacity? So we spend a lot of time doing that, so we're trying to focus on tools we can put in place to make sure we can respond quickly. Relationship building is huge in this business, and Steve mentioned that, Commissioner Shimke, when you mentioned where we're going to be sending these video mailers out to, site consultants. We want to send those to people that Steve knows, that Steve has interacted with. So when we look at events that he's attending, we've developed basically a spreadsheet of people that he meets, and we're coordinating through our client relationship management software that we recently installed, ways to have touch points to follow up with those connections. So that we're, throughout the course of every day, Steve might get an email reminder through the system, the client relationship management software, to say, hey, we're at the three months touch point of this particular site consultant. So we're working on that, working on ways to get him out of the office or on the phone talking to site consultants, because that, at the end of the day, is what brings successful projects to Leavenworth County. The other side of that, Steve mentioned a little bit of this, it's about having product and the tools to move the product. So you guys have heard a lot of discussions here about we don't have space under 50,000 square feet. We've developed the industrial spec program. We think that's going to help. But we continue to come to our investors, and you guys are a large investor of ours. The cities of Lansing, Leavenworth, Basehor, and Tonganoxie are investors. And we have right now, at last count, 73 corporate investors in this organization. Business owners that are investing their dollars into what we do. And so we believe that we owe every investor our best effort of making economic development work in Leavenworth County. So I hope that at the end of the day, as we get to know you guys better, you get to know us better, that you guys see that we are, and I'm going to use this term because I believe it as I've worked with Steve, and gosh, I've probably been involved with LCDC for close to 20 years, but we are the premier economic development organization in the county. And I think that's something that, as we continue to work together and to communicate and get direction, that we're going to be very successful, even more successful than we've been. And I hope that Steve has demonstrated how successful we've truly been. Sometimes it's not just about if you created a job on a specific project. It's what you've done out to get out and meet people, make relationships, make investments back into the county. $7 million invested back into the county that had we not had staff efforts in that, it would have never occurred. So we also, to represent you, we took an opportunity. We were offered a seat on the board of directors for the Kansas City Area Development Council, and I am now representing Leavenworth County and the corporation in those meetings that we have 10 or 12 of those a year. So with that, I'm going to shut up and let you ask some questions. Thank you for letting us be here.
Anybody have any questions of Mr. Jack or Mr. Russell? I don't. I go to
It's too close to
So I've been
lunch.
attending
I
meetings.
have a few questions.
I've caught up, I've been attending meetings.
My first question is, do you guys have an outline of areas in the county using the various private sources like Midco, AT&T, Dish, Verizon, of where high-speed internet is currently available by private sources? Do we have a document that we're able to give out to companies that are trying to come in?
No. And typically, utilities hate to give that up. But if you zero in on a certain area, they'll show you that part of the map. And you're the engineer.
Yeah, some of that came down after 9/11. A lot of, I mean, it used to be you were starting to get online, see a lot of like water maps and things like that. And we're just finding a lot of that information gets a little bit ratcheted down, and they want to be real specific of who they hand it out to. So the thought of a development corporation having a countywide map of either all the water line availability or telecom type communications, I've seen a few out there, but we don't have them at this point. it would take some investment to put a mapping system
Well,
together.
I know that we went to Doug and I went to the comprehensive plan meeting, and consistently, the thing that came up was rural internet. And we know that there's some areas, like along County Road 1, and there's some areas where we currently have high-speed internet available, but I just wondered if, when you're having companies invited to come in, we probably need to have some kind of a tool, maybe that doesn't show specifically where it is, but in this corridor, we have it available.
Well, and typically, we're focusing them on the Tonganoxie Business Park, Urban Hess, Gary Carlson, Leavenworth Business and Technology Park, mixed-use area, Wolf Creek and Baser. We know where the water is, we know where the gas is, we know whether Midco's there or not, or whether it's Time Warner.
But down like in Reno Township, where people are moving out from Lawrence, they're really interested in having high-speed internet, and there's some corridors that are we actually have it available. There's some areas down there where it would be available.
Because I live south of Reno, and I've got Midco, and that was one of the selling points when we moved into High Prairie Point 10 years ago. But yes, you're absolutely right. I'm on the neighborhood Reno County, or Reno, and there's a lot of...
So anyway, I just think that we should develop some kind of a resource for companies coming in. Second question I had was, if, like currently the funding, and I'm still learning, so if I don't get something right, I'm sorry. But we're funding through, part of the money goes to the Port Authority, and then part of the money goes to the LCDC. And I know at our work session, we talked about, well, why are we funneling the money in two different directions? And one thing that was brought up was maybe we would funnel the money all to the Port Authority, and then they would funnel the money to you. Can you address why we're historically doing it the way we're doing it right now? And what your thoughts would be if we changed it and routed it all through the Port Authority?
Well, I think that obviously, one organization, the Port Authority, was created in statute, and then the agreement that you'll be talking about this afternoon. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, that was us.
That's your fault. Okay. Back to in 1969, both were created. This one was created in 1969, but didn't have any staff until LAD was created in 1983. And so LAD became just the marketing arm for properties that the Port Authority were hoping to develop. And so there was one marketing arm, one development arm, and then over time, when Gary Carlson was one of my predecessors, focused on building Urban Hess and Gary Carlson, named after him, parks, then that was a focus. And so they've just sort of developed. You wouldn't, if you were going to start it over, or if you were to start it new, blank sheet of paper, maybe not created it that way. I think there are some advantages because it gives us two boards that actually, it doesn't seem it may not seem like on paper that it works seamlessly, but it really works pretty seamlessly from our perspective. So Blaine and I worked together when he was the executive director. We're in touch with that board a lot. It gives you an opportunity to have appointees on a board as well as a position on our board. And so I think it was developed at a time when, and the other thing was when the city of Leavenworth was the dominant force in the county, and now there are other players in other communities that are as well. So it's just developed over time this way. I think the bottom line from my perspective is I do an awful lot of asking for money, and I'd rather not. I mean, I know that I need to, but I'd rather do economic development. So,
well, if all the money was routed through the Port Authority, then would there be a downside to that?
I think the only thing we'd have to look into is the statutory reasons why there are separate organizations.
Yeah.
It's not, what we're doing is not a lot different than a lot of other county-type setups, and so I don't know all the specifics of that. I know the Port Authority has an ability to own property, whereas the Development Corporation doesn't. I think that we'd want to make sure that we understood all of that and maybe even quiz some of our counterparts on why they are separate. On the subject of port authorities, we're one of two.
Two
County has-
active, yeah.
two active
Watco
in the state.
Railroads down in southeast Kansas is the only other active one, and there's about 9 or 10 on the books, but no one uses.
And my understanding is we want to keep that entity because it gives us some advantages.
I believe it
I
does,
think so,
yeah.
yeah. Well, just to follow up with that, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
I think we want to make sure we understood what advantages, if any, there are to having separate organizations. Because and I just don't know enough, and we could research that a little bit, to understand specific reasons why we maybe wouldn't want to combine two organizations to one.
But the stability is probably the most important.
You're just saying funding.
When we do our funding, if we routed it
Yeah.
through the Port Authority, and then you get your funding.
Sure.
Other question is we visited about potential of having somebody in-house as an economic development person to help us to coordinate everybody together, not necessarily taking your resources away or changing, but maybe adding resources. Do you see any positives or negatives about that, or do you have any comments about that?
The city of Lawrence went through a similar process a few years ago, and it was very controversial. As it's turned out, that person at the city, rather than the economic developer at the chamber, and what the chamber does more reports, annual reports, and then for the city, TIFs and TDDs and property tax abatement from the city, IRBs, and handles that function. And so it works better in Lawrence and Douglas County than I think a lot of people thought it would. It's hard for me to imagine, since most of the projects we're going to do are going to locate within a city limit, and even if it starts outside the city is typically going to annex that so that they can provide city services, that I can't quite see the advantages of having a position here versus beefing up a marketing team to go knock on more doors. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well, is maybe this is something we could talk about at a budget request or something, but is looking at adding staff to our organization so that we can, address more consultant visits, site selection visits, and things like that, instead of, it seems like to me that you would create a certain amount of overhead to have to deal with that we're already dealing with in our budget. We could add staff and be more effective, even more effective if we could add staff. So maybe that's a discussion we could have downrange.
That's all I have.
Commissioners have any other questions? And thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank
report.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa, for coming.
Nice to see you, Lisa.
Well, I don't think our intent was almost 4 hours, but we do appreciate you waiting. It was great. It was very helpful. Thank you.
I want to read my thing.
All right.
Before we go.
Commissioners have anything they've done in the last week besides tornado cleanup?
Well, I just have a statement that I'd like to read, and it may not make people pleased, but it's my statement, and I have checked with council, and I've been told that it's appropriate.
Okay.
There's a matter I'd like to bring to the attention of my fellow commissioners who were not present at Saturday morning, June 1st legislative update, sponsored by the Leavenworth Lansing Chamber of Commerce. During that meeting, Senator Kevin Braun stated that the county appraiser's offices, in cooperation with county commissioners across the state, had artificially inflated property valuations in order to circumvent the tax lid placed on local governments by the state of Kansas legislature in 2015. As I believe we are all aware, this allegation is patently false. The Board of County Commissioner plays no role in the valuation process other than to appoint the appraiser every 4 years, which is also approved by the state of Kansas, and to approve budgets and allocate funds generated by taxes during the budget process. The Kansas legislature establishes the formula used by the county appraisers. The clerk office certifies those valuations once completed and sets the mill value based upon property taxes generated. At present time, the Board of County Commissioner operates under a tax lid implemented by the state of Kansas. Higher valuations are of no benefit to the Board of County Commissioners as a means of getting around the tax lid, and there is no way for them to use those as a means of getting around the tax lid. This is, by the way, a lid that was established for the sole purpose of preventing local governing bodies from using their discretion to raise the mill tax levy. When our state legislators decided to withhold that local ad valorem tax relief funding from local government as a means of assisting the state with balancing their budget. Senator Braun openly accused Board of County Commissioners and the county appraisers of a crime Saturday morning, and I would hope that Senator Braun either provide written proof to substantiate those allegations of illegal activity or withdraw his assertion. Thank you.
I was unable to attend that meeting. I was down at Linwood, so.
I'll just make a comment. I don't necessarily think that, well, I really think the senator should come in and explain his comments, because I don't believe, I believe possibly that he misspoke and it wasn't accurate, some of the things he said, and I think we should afford him the opportunity to come in and give us an explanation to that. I think maybe there was some misunderstanding of the way the law works on that.
Well, that's
So
fine.
you were at the,
Yes.
you were at the.
I was there.
Okay.
So I would just say that's my comment.
I have no problem with that, but I felt like since this has been posted, the video of that has been posted on the City of Lansing website, also on the Chamber, will be on the Chamber of Commerce website, has been shared by what I looked at as of yesterday about 600 times on the City of Lansing. There are individuals who are listening to those comments, and I did try to push back on the comments that were made, but there are people who would actually believe that is true.
I agree.
And it is not true. And I think that it's important that we make sure that people in our county and across the state realize that is not the fact, that is not the case.
Well, I think some of the things I've learned a lot being on this board, but listening to the legislators on Saturday, I think there's some misunderstanding among them as far as the tax lid, how it affects us as county commissioners and local governments as opposed to school districts. So they think that because the valuations are coming in, we're going to get all these resources, and we are going to get some, but it's very restricted on the part of the county.
That's correct. The point is that we don't call up, the county commissioners, the city commissioners do not pick up the phone and call the county appraiser's office and say, hey, we need you to raise the valuations of property X percent or X number of dollars for next year so that we can meet our budget requirements. That does not happen.
I actually called him and wanted him lowered.
Right. And I'm hopeful that that's not what I'm hopeful that's not his opinion. So I would encourage us to invite him to come and further explain his views.
And the thing I wanted to add, from intimately working with the appraiser system over the years, before that, this isn't the first time that's been said. And if you dug into it, the logistics of that statement is absurd, because the way the CAMA system works and the formulation that the appraisers use, they basically run everybody's value through 4 different systems, and then they pick one of those valuations in the end. One compares it to other comps, one uses a reconstruction cost, one trends it to like properties. There's several different ways that they come up with those values. So the logistics to wrap your head around what he's suggesting, they would have to pick an override value on all the properties to make sure that the end result was an increase. So that would be a huge red flag. It'd be so easy and blatant to see. You would easily detect that that was being done. So
And-
it's just the logistics of what he's suggesting is absurd.
Right, and then to clarify that residentially, appraisers are not allowed to cross over county lines to obtain valuations. They can for commercial property, cross county lines to obtain the, for comparisons.
If there's no comparables.
If there are no comparables in our county, but they cannot for residential cross over into Wyandotte County or Johnson County or Douglas County or any other county. They have to come from Leavenworth County for residential valuations, comps. So-
And another thing that did come up at that meeting was a question. It was pretty good, the county commissioners brought several questions, but the question was, people were concerned about their taxes, and rightfully so. But we don't have control over the property taxes, and the issue on the property taxes, we ask them, if you are over a certain age, 65 or a certain age, why don't we keep the property taxes from the state level restrained at just the rate of inflation for those elderly people? And all of the legislators said they agreed with that. Of course, it hasn't been passed.
Right.
So, but the issue, people are focused on the county commission as far as their property tax, and we only control a very, very small amount of that.
Exactly, and that's why I said there needs to be some educating. And I was pleased that our elected officials did all pretty much agree that there needed to be looking at returning returning the role where it belongs to some of the expenditures and taxing, and that is to the local level, so that to return our LAVR, our local ad valorem tax relief, so that we have that to work with, and then to remove the lid from the local governments, and then allow, the people, the voters, they can vote people out of office they feel that they're being irresponsible with the mills. I don't think we're out there saying, let's raise the mills so we can spend and spend. I mean,
Well,
that's
either
not-
put a lid on everything or take all the lids off.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, it was in the
Yeah, that
packets.
would be
It's 43% school, 22% city, 31% county. I mean, it's,
School don't have a lid.
Okay.
Anyways, anything
Thank
else
you.
other than you went to the Little Stranger Church and the Port Authority meeting?
Yep, that was
All
fun.
right.
We did have a fundraiser for the disaster relief at the church.
That was nice, too.
Yep, I was
Yeah.
there.
I'm sure there's going to be more events related to that coming up.
Yeah. After cleanup and everything's done. We need to thank all the people that done that. Tammy Hain and her sister out of Kay, I don't know her last name.
Her two sisters and her mother.
Was it two sisters and her mother?
And
Okay.
I don't want to slaughter their names, so I'm not.
Okay, all right.
amazing people.
They're amazing,
Yes.
yes. And then, of course, the pastor of the Elm Grove Church for allowing the church to be used for that.
That was
And
very nice of
All the
them,
people
and
that
their
worked on
staff and
that.
volunteers.
And all the agencies of our county government that have been so involved.
And other municipalities. I think that,
Right.
it's been incredible. I'm sure that Mr. McGaha will be.
Yeah. And maybe it's something we can discuss on recognition in our work session.
We really do need to
Because we
do some
really kind
recognition.
of went
Yeah, we run over.
So with that, we'll just go ahead and adjourn and